Morning, everyone, and welcome back. We have a pretty short agenda this morning, but for the majority of that agenda, I will turn it over to Regent Buchanan for the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee.
Todd, can I?
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Christian.
Madam Chair, if I could just real quickly acknowledge Lynette Brown had the loss of her father this last week, and so she's there with her family, and we wish her well, and our thoughts and prayers go out to her. I wanted to mention that, and then at the same time say thank you to Amy D'Amato and Winnie Strainer for picking up and jumping in the mix here and really providing a very smooth meeting for us. We appreciate your guys' willingness to step in and fill in that spot. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Christian. As a reminder, Student Regent Teal is not with us today. Everybody send him a congratulatory thought or two as he's preparing for some interviews on behalf of his recognition as a finalist for a Rhodes Scholar. His bride, Biz, is with us, and I can see her hand shaking just thinking about it. But we'll miss Joe, and I have some comments to share related to some of the items that Joe has passed on, but we'll get going. Item A, Deputy Commissioner Moisey, if you wouldn't mind grabbing that.
There we go. All right, I can figure out the technology. First item on the consent agenda this morning for the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee is the honorary doctorate. This was discussed by the Regents in the executive session in the September board meeting. The individual isn't aware, I guess, of they're being nominated, and the discussions to this point have been in executive session, and we're moving this forward from the consent.
Great. Appreciate it. Any regental comments or questions, observations on this? Regent Congressman Williams.
Well, except to say that this particular person is this recognition of this particular person is well-earned and well-deserved.
Thank you, Regent Williams. Any public comment or input from anybody else related to this item? None being seen, the committee puts it forth for consent, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda for the ARSA committee. Thank you. A motion has been made. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Then at this time, are there any further questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, then a motion has been made to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. On to the action items. Item A, Provost Potsman, we understand you might be giving us an update on the MSU Bozeman core themes. Action item A, thank you.
Good morning, all regents. Northwest accreditation, our regional accreditors, requires that each institution identify a half a dozen or less core themes that align with the statement of mission at the university. And we have done that and submitted those to our accreditors and have gotten approval of those through that process. And next fall, the accreditors will be coming to see if we have the resources at our institution to accomplish those core themes and our mission. So you have copies of those core themes there. They relate to our mission of learning, educating students, creating knowledge and art that relates to discovery, serving communities, which corresponds to engagement in our core theme. Montana State University is now, as part of its mission, moving to do its best work in these three areas by integrating, truly fully integrating all three of those. And in addition, stewardship that has to do with efficiency of our processes on campus and our management and stewardship of resources on the campus, both physical and natural and human resources. So those are the general areas of the core themes that we have, and we're looking for formal approval from this body.
Great, thank you, Provost Postman. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Any additional comments from anybody at the table? Any input at all, public input? Great, well, we appreciate the work that's been put into this and the specificity in particular related to these action points, so that's fantastic. So Madam Chair, we pass it to you as a motion, action item A, to accept MSU Bozeman's core themes as proposed.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the new core themes at Montana State University Bozeman. A motion has been made to approve the core themes at Montana State University Bozeman. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any further questions or comments from members of the board? A motion has been made to approve the core themes at Montana State University Bozeman. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
Thank you. For the next two items, I'd like to invite Professors Douglas and Professor Sexton up to the table to join President Cruzado. Just a little bit of context related to these two items. We are recognizing members of the system for exemplary service in a way that this body has deemed appropriate for exactly that, having a profound impact on the success and experience of a student. And by receiving the Regents professorship, it is one way that we as a body can individually say thank you on a very specific way. And as I mentioned before, Regent Teal is not with us, and I know that he personally has had a very strong relationship with both of you, and in particular you, Professor Douglas, the impact and singular impact that you've had on his curriculum. He pointed it out in discussions numerous times with a lot of emotion and as a student, and it's obvious to us that not only you individually but the both of you have exemplified that type of impact, and we're just thrilled that you're able to join us. And with that introduction, I pass the microphone to Madam President.
Yes. Thank you very much, Regent Buchanan. Members of the board, every day is a day of blue and gold at Montana State University. But today, it's a golden day. I want to thank you for approving an honorary doctorate to Robert Persick, which we will be granted in the first winter graduation in the history of Montana State University, to be celebrated on Saturday, December the 15th. Just a note, Time magazine just had this first sentence to say about Robert Persick when they wrote, "One of the most important and influential books written in the past half-century, Robert Persick's Zen and the Art of the Motorcycle Maintenance is a powerful, moving, and penetrating examination on how we live and a breathtaking meditation on how to live better." I'm using that as a preamble to introduce to you two extraordinary individuals whom we have in the faculty of Montana State University. And I think that the words of powerful, moving, and penetration examination on how we live and a breathtaking meditation on how to live better, it's an adequate description of what Dr. Trevor Douglas and Dr. Michael Sexton have accomplished for us. First of all, I would like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Trevor Douglas. He is a faculty member, a full professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Montana State University, which, by the way, just this week we received notification that has been ranked number 28th in the nation. Yes. Dr. Douglas is the director and co-founder of MSU Center for Bio-Inspired Nanomaterials since it was established in 2003. And he has instituted a creative approach to the synthesis of nanomaterials that features the use of isolated and designed proteins cages as templates for the synthesis. In other words, our faculty member here has a very large body of work in a science dedicated to the study of the very small entities. He has secured numerous patents and provisional patents on inventions. His work has resulted in external and substantial grant funding of nearly $20 million for the university. He has published more than 150 scientific papers in the most prestigious journals about topics that span on scientific activity to solid-state physics through medical imaging. But with your permission, what I would like to read to the Regents, it's an email I received from a student. And this is from Courtney Richard. And it goes like this. Dear President Cruzado, I was thrilled to read in the MSU News that Professor Trevor Douglas was nominated as a Montana University System Regents Professor. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in chemistry at Stanford University. And prior to that, I was an undergraduate student of Professor Douglas at Montana State University. Professor Douglas taught my first chemistry course at MSU, and near the end of the semester, asked me to join his research group. Joining his research group has been one of the best decisions of my life, as it is largely responsible for my decision and ability to pursue my ideal career as a chemist. Also, importantly, Professor Douglas encouraged me to excel as both a student and a person. And I believe that encouragement is one of the best gifts that a teacher can give. Professor Douglas allowed me to work as my undergraduate research advisor, Professor Douglas provided me with resources that are typically reserved only for graduate students. After getting my feet wet in the lab, Professor Douglas allowed me to work on several of my own research projects. Especially in chemistry, this sort of autonomy in research for undergraduates is generally unheard of. And I had But Professor Douglas trusts and encourages all of his undergraduate researchers to work hard and pursue their interests. This approach pays off. Before I even started graduate school, I had 5 peer-reviewed publications, including 1 first author paper, as well as numerous awards, and most valuably, a depth of research experience that prepared me to become productive immediately in my graduate school career. Additionally, the enthusiasm for chemistry that I learned in the lab pushed me to get the most of my coursework and made me a better undergraduate student overall. The work of Professor Douglas and other MSU professors to get the undergraduate students involved in research early in their careers is, in my opinion, one of the best assets of the university. I also saw firsthand the enormous positive impact of Professor Douglas' efforts in science outreach, as I volunteered at many of the outreach activities in Montana, as well as in South Africa. One of my favorite outreach efforts involved working with students from the Crow Reservation. During our first interaction with the students from the Crow Reservation, we traveled there to do our classic gecko experiment, which uses Post-it notes as a model of a gecko foot to explore the science behind the way that geckos walk up walls. The students were enormously creative in their approach to the experiment and receptive to the problem-based learning, and overall, the event was so successful that the students later traveled to MSU for more activities, including Science Saturdays, another of Professor Douglas' efforts. I believe Professor Douglas' work in science outreach has made MSU more accessible to Montanans and increased the positive presence of MSU and the rest of the Montana University system in the minds and everyday lives of Montanans. I also believe that Professor Douglas' science outreach efforts encourage the attendees' aspirations to attend college as well as to become scientists. This innovative community involvement is another reason why Professor Douglas is invaluable to the Montana University system. In summary, I'm very happy that Professor Douglas is being recognized for his exceptional role in the Montana University system by his nomination as a Montana University System Regents Professor. I am grateful for his encouragement and time when I was an undergraduate at Montana State University. I'm also thankful for his efforts to make science, MSU, and the Montana University system in general more accessible to Montanans, and for inspiring in me an awareness of the importance of community involvement and leadership. This was an impromptu email, Mr. Regent, but I could not have said it better. So I kindly submit the nomination of Dr. Trevor Douglas for a Montana University System Regents Professorship for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and to you, President Douglas. As I mentioned, some of the comments that your former student, possibly current student, I'm not sure, but Joe is just so specific about the impact you have not only on him and his studies, but the fellow students he's had, and as articulated by those emails and letters, and clearly the confidence that your president has put in you. It's certainly a pleasure to be a part of this process, and we, at the very least, thank you so much for your continued service and dedication to Montana State University, and I appreciate your willingness to not only come over and join us here, but for your continued impact on students. Now, I don't know if you'd like to share any comments or any thoughts at all related to any of this.
Sure. I think, firstly, thank you so much for this, President Cruzado and Board of Regents. It's humbling, I guess, to be nominated. It's actually very difficult to be nominated and recognized. I think this is possible because of enormous support from some of my colleagues, and some of whom came up with me today and drove up here with me this morning, which was fantastic. But also the students. The fantastic thing about this job is the renewal of working with new, excited generation every year, and that inspires me, and so thank you to them.
Fantastic, thank you. Fellow board members, any comments or observations? Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Professor Douglas, I have a long-held belief that there is, and I say this to each of you, that there is nothing more important or powerful than the opportunity to work with and develop young students. And I congratulate each of you on your efforts to transform lives through the work that you do in and out of the classroom. Congratulations.
Thank you. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce action item B, the recognition of Professor Douglas for Regents Professor nomination. Madam Chair, committee makes the motion to approve.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. At this point, I would entertain a motion. A motion has been made to approve the Regents Professor nomination of Professor Douglas. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Is there any board comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Congratulations.
Madam President, I believe you have another opportunity for an introduction here.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Regent Buchanan, members of the board. I need to compose myself because this is a big day. This is a very big day for us. Later today, you will be hearing about the strategic plan of Montana State University and our emphasis on our land-grant mission of teaching and learning, research and creativity, and outreach and service. But we have decided to stretch in our strategic plan, and not only to pay attention to each of those areas, but what we have committed ourselves to doing is to integrate those three areas. So the candidate that I have for your consideration at this moment is certainly a man ahead of his time in so many ways. And Professor Michael Sexton, in his life and in his service to Montana State University, is one of the best examples that we have of the extraordinarily effective integration of his skills as a master teacher with his scholarship, creativity, and imagination. Please allow me to indulge. Everyone who knows Michael Sexton knows that he's a master teacher. Perennially the highest evaluated member of the MSU Bozeman English Department for his teaching, so far above the others that he is in a category by himself. Students have always clamored to get into his classes. Over the years, his courses have been among the first to fill, and by semester's end, students are effusive in their praise. Professor Sexton generates an excitement in the classroom that makes even non-English majors turn lyrical. One introduction to literary studies student comments in his evaluation that Dr. Sexton had been, quote, captivating in his narrative, stimulating students to participate. One student wrote, "The instructor has taught us how to imagine." Students in his Shakespeare course say that their experience was not only thought-provoking, but life-changing, and that, quote, he breathed life and magic into Shakespeare in a marvelous and charismatic way. Students in his mythology courses regularly use words like fascinating or exciting. Here are sample student responses from just one semester. Quote, he brings the course to a real personal level for us all by incorporating events from our everyday lives into the mythic script. So often, or quote, so often we take classes where we sit and stare and pretend to learn, but how often do we sit and listen intently to stories and take the stories with us? This class has taught me a new way of perceiving the world. Quote, Dr. Sexton made English 209 more than just a class with a handy call number and abbreviated title. He made it a genuine horizon-expanding, eye-opening experience. End of quote. The English department uses a narrative student evaluation form in addition to the NAP form. To the question of what has the instructor done especially well, students begin with statement every semester, such as everything. The classroom seemed to disappear when he began to speak, and it wasn't because I fell asleep. Professor Sexton was a pioneer of experiential learning long before it became a fad. Yet he has always preserved a critical balance, which he has theorized and written about it as well, in the master-teacher-student relationship. Actually, there are many at this moment. It is not an uncommon experience to run into doctors, lawyers, and other professionals around the state who cite Michael Sexton's classes more than any others as impacting their lives. And now, having been at MSU since 1966, Professor Sexton is finding that it is just not about the children of his first students, but their grandchildren as well, who are now appearing in his classes with two previous generations of high expectations to live up to, which of course he does with aplomb. Michael Sexton's catalog of teaching awards over the years is unsurpassed and includes the Friedley Distinguished Teacher Award, the Burlington Northern Outstanding Teacher Award, now the President's Excellence in Teaching Award, the CLS Outstanding Teaching Award, and the Chamber of Commerce Award for Excellence in Teaching. As a teaching mentor, he has been selfless with his time, sharing his expertise and helping new faculty in the English department and even across campus become acculturated to the quality of teaching that he models. Professor Sexton's extraordinary contributions have not only been in the classroom. He is a true scholar of public humanities. Representative are the interdisciplinary conferences he has organized. Especially notable was Logan 83, an interdisciplinary gathering which drew thousands to MSU to engage the issue of literacy, technology, and mythology. This event won the 1984 Schwartz Award for Outstanding Humanities Conferences in the United States. Other memorable conferences include Eclipse 79, which drew scientists and humanists from around the world to celebrate the total solar eclipse visible in Bozeman that year. Reciting the Future, a conference on memory and imagination, and Yesterday's Tomorrow, an exploration of the Humanities Museum interface. And I need to add that the nomination of Robert Pirsig, Dr. Michael Sexton was one of the main proponents. And loyal to his idea of bringing people together to explore topics, to discuss the importance of quality in our lives, he has also organized a celebration that we will be calling Chautauqua, which will be immediately before our commencement ceremony. Professor Sexton has taken his interdisciplinary creativity into print through the humanities print journal Corona, which since the advent of the internet has evolved into a multimedia enterprise. Also, I need to add, most notably recently was the film My Book and Heart Shall Never Part, premiered here at the Emerson Center for Art and Culture in Bozeman, and last year the Reader's Theater production of The Book of Many Colors, a celebration of the birthdays of the King James Bible and Shakespeare's Tempest. Dr. Sexton has also served as chair of the Montana Committee for the Humanities from 2003 to 2004. And from 1977 through 1988, he conducted Views and Reviews, a weekly radio show on humanities and related issues. Michael Sexton's work has, of course, appeared in print over the many years of his career. He published a book on Wallace Stevens and has written dozens of articles and reviews for academic journals, edited volumes, and popular periodicals. In addition, his written work on mythology has been widely used in the classroom by other scholars of mythology, most notably his Myth, The Way We Were or The Way We Are, in Introduction to the Study of Religion, edited by T. William Hall, and the deja vu glitch in the Matrix trilogy in Jacking into the Matrix franchise, a cultural reception and interpretation, edited by Matthew Carroll and William Doty. Moreover, he maintains connections to a broad community of scholars in diverse fields who admire and respect his work. In addition to his outreach, Professor Sexton has served in many ways in professional organizations and scholarly societies, and no one who has been to an MSU commencement can forget the richness and warmth of his voice as he flawlessly reads the names of our graduates. I personally call him my masterpiece theater voice. Regents Professor is the most prestigious title that may be granted in recognition of accomplishments by a faculty member. I believe the singular career of Professor Michael Sexton makes him the ideal candidate for such an honor. And therefore, I humbly ask the Board of Regents to approve this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. What a heartfelt introduction. Thank you. And to you, Dr. Sexton, thank you for what is clearly an undying commitment to student success and creating those connections that students need to be successful as they navigate our system and the navigation of life thereafter. I would welcome and look forward to any comments you might like to share with us.
Well, I guess I'm looking for some grandchildren here of the people I taught several centuries ago. Sometimes I think this is also a longevity award. I arrived in Bozeman in 1966. This means I put in about 46 years of teaching, and I can't think of anything I would rather have done in retrospect. Not only the right vocation, but the right place. Montana State University. I was teaching an honors seminar with the daunting title, Recursive Structures in Literature, Film, and Cognitive Science, when the secretary of the honors program came in and said I had a call from the president. And I thought, why would she be interrupting my seminar on recursive structures? Am I in trouble? So I went to the phone, and President Cruzado informed me that she had nominated me for the Regents professorship. I said, I think you have the wrong person. She said, no, I don't. So I said, along with Trevor, I used the same word, I'm deeply humbled. I'm deeply honored that I will be receiving this award. But I would like to take this opportunity, as President Cruzado said, to alert you to the Chautauqua 2012, which will be in Bozeman, December 7th and 8th, which is in honor of a previous teacher at Montana State College then, Robert Persig, whose two books, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Lila, have called us to the terrific urgency of the pursuit of quality, not only in higher education, but in all our lives. And one other anecdote, I just found out the other day, the New York Times did an interview with the Turkish Nobel laureate Orhan Pamuk. I don't know if any of you have seen this. And he was asked many questions about books, and they came to the interesting question, which was, Mr. Pamuk, you are one of the 5 or 6 most respected and admired writers in the world. What book would you recommend or would you give to the President of the United States? And he answered without hesitation, he said, I would give not only to the present president, but also to all other presidents. A book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So I would like to thank the Regents for the very wise decision they did here today to honor and to recognize as the recipient of the honorary degree, Robert Prisick. Thank you for all of your attention, and indeed, I'm not just humbled, I'm wobbly.
Thank you. What great comments. Any other comments from members of the board? Again, Madam Chair, it is indeed a pleasure to have the honor to make the motion on behalf of our committee to recognize Dr. Sexton with the Regents Professorship. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't ask for the comment. Chancellor Grosset.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, and Professor Sexton. In addition to multiple generations of faculty and students, there are multiple generations of administrators who have seen your work and craft as inspiration for their own work, and I thank you for that.
Again, Madam Chair, we make the motion to accept the nomination.
Mr. Chairman, Professor, a few days ago, the word apparently had reached some of your former students who now live in Missoula that you were going to receive this honor. I don't know how they knew it before the Regents did, but they did. I saw three of them together downtown. One of them came up to me and said, "Are you Pat Williams?" Yeah. He said, "You're a Regent, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, you know, I hope you bestow this honor on our professor." And are any of those students, former students, here today? No. Well, one of them said, one of us hoped to be there. I guess doctorate classes or whatever have kept them away. But he took a piece of paper out of her pocket and said, in case we're not there, you tell the professor this. And then she read it. And it said, "We are honored to have taken your classes. We are enriched by your words, your paragraphs, and your wisdom, and we give you our thanks." Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. A motion has been made to approve the professor nomination of Dr. Michael Sexton. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Any further board comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Congratulations.
What a fantastic honor, and what a neat opportunity for us as the board to make this somewhat, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't feel like the gravity's heavy enough for the impact that these guys have on the students of our system. Very proud to be a part of it. Thank you, Dr. Sexton and Dr. Douglas. Excellent. Great, thanks again. That completes the action items for our agenda today. We'll move on to the information item. Deputy Commissioner Moisey, if you wouldn't mind going over item A, please.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan.
not to be mundane after the last presentation, but it's having served on a committee at the University of Montana here a few years ago, comprised mainly of Regents professors. It's truly an honor to have faculty of that caliber on all of our campuses, and glad to see two more in the fold. Moving on, item A, information item. A is the level 1 memorandum of approvals and announcements. These are, I don't want to say minor academic items, but these are items that are approved in the Commissioner's office. They're information items. I will just briefly go down through these. Typically, they're approval of new certificates or programs, minor programs, terminations, moratorium, and consolidations. We have a couple of terminations and a moratorium, Great Falls College is putting their fire and rescue technology Associate of Applied Science program on moratorium. The Northwest Commission on Colleges and Accreditation of Colleges and Universities has as one of their criteria that no more than 25% of the credits are allowed to be from prior learning experience, and so that institution is looking at that as part of their continuing that program. Miles Community College is terminating a medical receptionist certificate because of low enrollment, and Helena College at the University of Montana is approving, or we are approving 3 certificates one in geoscience technology and 2 certificates, a level 1 and a level 2 in e-learning. Again, these are important academic items for those institutions, and these are here as information. If there's any questions about any of those.
Any comments or questions related to item A? Thanks, Neil, very much. Chancellor Limbaugh, sounds like we're going to move on to an introduction on your behalf. If you join us up here and make that introductory remarks, I appreciate it. While he's walking up here, I do want to take a second to say thanks to Neil, Dr. Moisey, for his interim position and work you're putting on this. It feels like our committee is working as well as I've been a part of it since I've been a part of it. So thanks for all your leadership. Chancellor Limbaugh.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Christian, members of the Regents. At our last Regents meeting, I talked to you all about some of the work that we were doing up in Northern to help ourselves. But talk is an abstract. I explained to you about the volunteerism, and I explained to you about the things that we were doing as a community. But the old adage of a picture being worth 1,000 words is actually true. I have a short 3-minute video I'd like to share with you all that gives you an overview of 3 projects that we undertook to help ourselves. The remodeling of our food court, the upgrading of our gymnasium, and the upgrading of our residence halls through, and this may sound mundane to you all, but it's actually very important, sewing curtains for every room in our residence hall. I emphasize this because this was done as a volunteer effort. We needed to take care of ourselves. We wanted to create the best possible opportunities for our students, but we also, shall we say, were financially challenged. So through a significant partnership with Montana State University and the community, I want you all to see the outcome of what happens when individuals care about an institution and they want to do the best they can for the students. I want to give thanks to Dr. Cruzado for the help that she gave us through allowing her staff to come freely up and participate and provide the kind of expert advice that we needed. I'd also like to thank Dr. Engstrom because as we have a phenomenally gifted new food service director who 6 weeks ago was a director in this building. So thank you, Royce, for your contributions to the efforts at Northern to improve our programs. What you'll see in the next 3 minutes are just some clips, some glimpses of the individuals that are participating. You'll see our director of athletics, our provost husbands. You will see members of the community. You will see faculty, one of whom is here, Lanny Wilkie, president of the Academic Senate, through his work into it. You'll see students, including Ashley Velasquez, who is here in the audience also as our student body president. You will see work being done by many individuals, and you'll also see glimpses of my spouse, Tricia, who visualized and coordinated the whole thing for us. I wanted you all to see this because I'm very proud of Northern. I'm proud of what they have done, and I'm proud of what they are capable of doing. And I wanted you all to see the individuals who are supporting Northern, not only at me as an institution, but all of us who have dedicated our lives to making education accessible and to creating tomorrow's leaders. And these volunteers have done something very significant to help Northern, and by extension, to help all of us. So with that, I hope you enjoy a view into life at Northern.
What I would like to introduce to you this morning is one example of a way in which the 4 campuses are working together in advising and giving the tools to the students to make sure that they don't miss opportunities, that they get the courses that they need, and that they graduate in a timely manner. This is the program Degree Works, and I want to call to the podium Mr. Campo, who's our Associate Registrar, but I also would like to say that this work would not have been possible without a legion of people behind Mr. Campo, starting with our registrar, Bonnie Ashley, our Vice President, Jim Rimpo, our CIO, DeWitt Latimer, and their counterparts in each of our campuses in Billings and in Great Falls and Northern. So with that, Tony, good morning. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam President, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's my pleasure here to talk about DegreeWorks. A year ago, the chief academic officers from the 4 MSU campuses came to you and talked about the results of their advising task force. And one of their recommendations was the implementation of DegreeWorks. And since that time, we've been asked several, again and again, well, what is DegreeWorks? And so that's what I'm here to talk about, is to demonstrate DegreeWorks. And I'm wondering why. I'm on it, yep. There we go. All right. So what is DegreeWorks? And if there are people at off-site, there is a PowerPoint that sort of has some screenshots and follows along with this. But DegreeWorks, quite simply, it's a tool in the ongoing dialogue between collegiate advisor and student. And of course, that dialogue has been with us since Socrates first started talking to Plato, who then started talking to Aristotle. That dialogue continues as an inherent part of the academy. And then, so what does DegreeWorks do, though, as a tool? It really focuses the communication that defines student-specific graduation requirements. And we've had a lot of conversation on campus about these two sentences, and they really can be stimulating and excellent conversations, but for the sake of expediency, we'll go right into a demonstration here of DegreeWorks. What we see here is what a student or a faculty member or an advisor would see when they log into this system. This top bar up on top, this is all of the navigation that goes along with DegreeWorks, and really it's cluttered here because you're seeing what the student sees, what the advisor would see, what someone from the registrar's office would see. What the individual student sees is much more elegant than that. But really the magic, if you will, happens down here. This is what's called the degree audit. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more here so we can get the whole, there we go. So here we have, let's try this. There it is. All right, so the degree audit essentially starts with an academic profile of the student. And you can see here we have a student, a typical Yosemite Sam, a typical Montana State University student. He's a senior. His advisor there is Jerry Weston. One of the things that they talked about, that the advising task force talked about, was linking the student to the advisor more closely. And this, if the student wants to contact their advisor, they simply hover over their advisor's name, they send them an email, they're good to go. The same is true if the advisor wants to contact the student. It's a hot link out to their email address, and they're good to go as well. You can see the rest of the sort of academic profile over on the right. You see that there's a registration hold, so you get a snapshot of the student right away. And then what we do is we divide up DegreeWorks into what we call blocks. And so the first block is that student view. The next block is that degree block. And the degree, really what we're talking about here is when the chancellors and presidents across the state at graduation say that they are conferring degrees by the power vested in them from this body. This is what they're talking about. And degrees are generally made up of these 4 components. So you have a certain number of credits, 128 credits in the case of engineering, and this tells them you have 128 credits that are required. You've completed 107, you're currently enrolled in 11, you need 42 upper division, so it tells them right exactly where they are in their progress towards degree completion. The other requirements for degree are also outlined here, the core 2.0 that is required, as well as their major requirements. And as people meet these requirements, these red boxes turn to green checks. And when this top red box turns to a green check, that means the student has graduated and we're good to go. So it's a very straightforward sort of navigation process through this. And then as we scroll through, we get greater and greater levels of clarity and refinement. So we have Core 2.0. Well, we still need to work on Core 2.0. So let's scroll down and see what that is. What we see here in Core 2.0 is a list of all the requirements for core, and then how that student is meeting those requirements. This student took a Business 101 in their first semester to meet their university seminar requirement. You can see their advanced placement comes in, their transfer work you can see comes in as they articulate their transfer work, in this case from Montana State University Billings. And then when there is a red box, we see, okay, that is not complete. What do we need? We need one diversity class remaining. So the students start to get a sense of how they're doing for core. I should note also that if the student transferred in the university system core or had an Associate of Arts or an Associate of Science degree, they would see a green check there at the point of transfer, and of course core would be met. Then we go down to the civil engineering, their actual major requirements, and we see another indicator here, and that indicator is that what's commonly referred to as the blue squiggly. Some others refer to it as a tilde. The tilde is those classes that are in progress. So the student can see what is completed, what is in progress, and what is yet to complete. As we start talking about the rules and what it takes to graduate, as soon as you start talking about any rule, you need to start talking about, well, what are the exceptions to that rule? And this has a level of granularity and a level of access that allows departments specifically to make those exceptions as sort of is their purview, and then it records that. Here you can see that I made an exception. I substituted Engineering 2050 from Montana Tech of the University of Montana into EM 251. The reason I needed to make that substitution was because that the student took Engineering 2050 prior to Common Course numbering, and so I needed to go in and make that exception myself right there. So that exception is made for the student. You can also see then there are notes, there are typical advising notes. For example, students must complete all pre-professional requirements with a C- or better before proceeding to the professional requirements. So those things that the advisors just want to make sure all students are aware of, even whether they're looking at this at home, whether they're looking at this from a computer lab, or during the advising session, that those notes are available for everybody. Scrolling on down, what we see is, here the student is making their transition into their professional electives, and when there is a red box indicating that there's something left to complete, they see how can they complete that over here. And one of the nice features of DegreeWorks is we see that the student needs one of these two classes, either eGen 350 or Stat 332. But you don't really know what those are. But if you hover over them for a minute, first of all, you can see the title of the class, and then if you click on it, right, you can see the prerequisites for the class, you can see a description of the class, you can see when the course is offered. So the student right here from this degree audit can start building their schedule for the next semester and the next couple of semesters. And then as we scroll on down, what we see, so there we had the major, the core, the degree requirements. We have these electives down here. And in talking to Yosemite Sam, it looked like he took that Business 101 course, enjoyed business, continued to pursue his degree in engineering, but just started picking up business courses. And so we see all of these classes down here that he's taken that aren't applying. Another great feature of DegreeWorks is this what if. So let's say that Yosemite Sam says, well, I've been taking these classes, but I really want to know what would it take to, say, get a minor in business administration. He can go ahead and select that, and we'll look at that in a minute. But you can change the major, you can add a major, you can add a minor, you can sort of see what will happen and process that what if. And then what we see is the system live and in real time goes down and says, well, if you were to declare a degree or to declare a minor in business administration, here's what it would look like. And so we come down here and the student can see, wow, I only have and can know this quickly. It's 1, 2, 3 classes, 3 more classes, and I can pick up my minor in business administration. And so when we've been sharing this with students, this has been a very popular tool, very popular feature in this, particularly for those students who come in undecided and can just go in one major after another and explore as they go through. And then we have the electives. All those classes that are blue tildes up above are shown down here as your in progress or the classes you're registered for. There are many other exciting and good features to this, but I really wanted to just give you an overview. The one other one the last feature I'll point out is just there is a notes section so that advisors can share notes, they can add notes. Student has a hold, needs to pay bill, right? They save that note, the note's saved, we're good. One of the things we have to do then is, back at the worksheet, we reprocess the audit, and then down at the bottom of the audit, we'll see any of the notes that have been made here. So the student has hold and needs to pay his bill. So that those notes can be useful from semester to semester. As students go through, you can see what you talked about the previous semester. So that, in a nutshell, is degree works and what people were talking about a year ago, and I thank you for your time.
Any comments or questions from members of the board? Paul, or Regent Tuss?
I have a question. Is it currently being used across the MSU system would be my first question. And secondly, how are the counselors taking to this? Have they adopted this? Do they like this?
Yes, it is being used across the system. It has not been rolled out to all the students. It's advisors on each of the campus, and so we roll it out to the advisors this semester. Students will have access to it next semester. And the early results are, yes, they are using it. Anecdotally, there was one advisor who, first of all, was very concerned about being replaced. You can't replace the advisor. You know, we do so much. It's a nuanced, you know, and so we had the conversation about this being a tool. Well, then at our rollout demonstration, the same advisor came up to me afterwards and said to me, in 6 months, we won't know how we lived without this. So yeah, so the advisors are taking to it.
Great question.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for that. It's really informative. As you were scrolling through, I, as a teacher, was paying particular attention to Mr. Sam's grades. And I wonder if Yosemite knows that he needs to see an academic counselor.
Well, I was thinking, you know, the three.
It's a joke, folks.
Yeah. A 3.3 in an engineering curriculum, he has a lot to be proud of, actually. Yeah. All right.
I'd like to add something that is certainly of interest to the Regents. We have received a grant at OPI and are presently developing electronic transcripts that'll be available for our high school students, and hopefully will make the move into college and into your work a lot easier than it has been in the past as far as receiving those transcripts.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thanks for the presentation. We appreciate it. Madam President, on to the next item.
Yes. I'm very proud to introduce the MSU strategic plan. This is a monumental effort that the institution has undergone for the last 18 months, shortly after my arrival. I'll allow the presenter to go into more detail, but one of the things that gives me an immense amount of satisfaction was the number of people that were involved in the conversations that led to this final document. We're talking in the hundreds of individuals. We're talking about hundreds of hours of meetings, charrette opportunities, forums, different versions, and I'm delighted to present to the Montana Board of Regents today our finished product. I want to thank Dr. Chris Fasnow, our Director for Planning and Analysis, for her hard work, and I also want to thank once again Jim Rimpau, who led the Planning Council that spearheaded this effort. So with that, Dr. Fasnow, welcome this morning.
Thank you, Madam President. Regent Buchanan, members of the board, it's my pleasure today to talk about Mountains and Minds, Learners and Leaders, our new strategic plan. And I think we can probably make this fairly brief because you have heard so much about the plan already. Our core themes overlap very closely with the plan, and you saw two shining examples of spectacular faculty who already embody where we want to go with this plan. So we'll just do a quick high-level summary today. As President Cruzado said, this is the product of more than 18 months of planning by hundreds of people across the university and indeed across the state. Could we go to the next slide, please? This was a highly collaborative and participatory process. If any of you were involved in any of these, and some of you were, Regent Teal is one of our planning council members and also served on the strategic planning committee. Tyler Trevor came and participated in our charrette. You know this was a very active group. It was a really fun process to be a part of. The resulting document is a very high-level goal-setting document. We leave a lot of flexibility to the colleges, departments, and other units and individuals across the university to develop strategies to meet those goals. We're using it as a budget and a resource allocation tool. Indeed, one of the objectives is to align our budgeting and our planning processes very closely, and we are already in process doing that. It will aid in priority setting in terms of both areas for growth and, if we need to, areas for change. And it emphasizes our role and strengths as a land-grant institution. You'll see some very familiar language in the plan, and it aligns with the Board of Regents plan as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. You have approved our mission statement, but it guides the plan, so I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see it one more time. Our vision statement on the next slide, thank you, is lofty, but it also is a really accurate depiction of who we are now as an institution. In addition to defining a mission and a vision, the Strategic Planning Committee came up with 4 core values, 4 guiding principles that direct all that we do, describe who we are and our interactions with people both on and off campus. And they are respect, integrity, student success, and excellence. And you'll see they make a very handy and lovely acronym, RISE. Makes it very easy to remember. And throughout the plan, those 4 values will be highlighted. We have 6 goal areas, and each of the goals has underlying objectives and very specific metrics. We still have some work to do on defining our metrics in areas that are somewhat new for us, or new at least in terms of measurement. But there is a great deal of specificity in the plan on where we want to go. But what I'm going to show you today are just the 6 goal statements. They're the 3 pillars of the land-grant institution: learning, discovery, and engagement. And then a few other new things that we want to talk about. In learning, we focus on student learning outcomes, retention and graduation rates, and job and graduate school placement. And these goals align very cleanly with the MUS plan. In our discovery section, our objectives focus on the quality of our faculty and their work, our research and creative infrastructure, and on graduate education, particularly doctoral education and STEM graduate education. In the engagement arena, this is a traditional strength at MSU, and the objectives underlying this goal emphasize partnerships outside the university, as well as opportunities for outreach, service, and leadership development for all members of the MSU community. As President Cruzado mentioned earlier, really the defining characteristic of this plan and of our core themes that Dr. Potvin mentioned earlier is the integration of those 3 pillars. So our 4th goal is integration, and we will continue to be a university where learning, discovery, and engagement merge seamlessly to the benefits of students, faculty, staff, and indeed to the whole community. Our last 2 goals are familiar to you as a board, and they're very familiar to us as a land-grant institution: access and stewardship. Our access goal, we seek to widen access through appropriate growth in the student body, as well as in our teaching methods and our teaching media. And we are also looking at some diversity goals within this broader goal of access. And our stewardship goal, we will continue to be excellent stewards of the resources entrusted to us. We have 4 areas here that we're focusing on: our physical resources, fiscal, human, and of course our environmental resources. As we move forward, next slide please. The Planning Council will continue to shepherd the plan. We're acting as a resource for individual units that are doing their planning now. Colleges and vice presidential units are developing strategic plans to help push our university plan forward this semester. And next semester, departments and other offices across campus will be working on their plans. This is a plan, I have to tell you sort of editorially, I have never seen such strong legs under a strategic plan and a strategic planning process as I've seen in this one. It is not an exaggeration to say I have not been in a meeting since about August where the plan has not been mentioned, and I can tell you it hasn't usually been mentioned by me. It's been other people who have brought the plan up. We have very strong leadership on this plan and very wide buy-in for the plan across the university. So I'm excited about where MSU is going and where this plan is taking us in the next 6 or 7 years. Happy to answer questions. You have a copy of the full plan in front of you, members of the board. You can also find it on the website, which is on the last slide there. It's very easy to remember, montana.edu/strategic plan. You can also see some of the successes that we have already experienced and some of the investments that we're making in the plan there. And there are some tools for units in developing their plans on that site as well. And I welcome any questions. I'm happy to direct them to other people.
That's what we like to do too. Great summary. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the conclusion of quite a project. Conclusion's probably not accurate. Now it's time to get going, right?
Now we start moving.
Yeah.
That's right.
Work begins. Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the board? Regent Williams.
Mr. Chairman, could you go back one slide? Can you go and, yeah, just. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions while we have it in front of us? Again, thank you. Obviously a thoughtful and thoroughly vetted and promoted effort. We're real excited about it. Thank you. As a Bobcat, I'm excited about it too. It sounds great.
Thanks.
Excellent. Moving on the agenda. Pardon me. I know that Mr. Trevor is in charge of coming up here, so start making your way up here.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'll be extremely brief on this agenda item, kind of filling in here for Brandy Foster, our American Indian Minority Director. And you just see kind of a sea of really small numbers up on the board right now. What this is if we could focus in just a bit, maybe toward the fall 2012 semester, is by campus enrollment of American Indians. And it seems like a pretty straightforward thing to track, although, as probably most of you know, the definition and method in which we collect race and ethnicity changed in fall 2010. It really took effect at the system level data warehouse fall 2011 and fall 2012. That's why you see those two semesters offset to the right. Figures typically jumped a little bit in the new methodology, which I won't get into unless you really want me to. But it did slightly increase our numbers. So moving forward, as a system, we are making a real concerted effort to ensure that the numbers that we're reporting for American Indians by campus match the numbers that the campus folks know to be true. And moving forward as a system in tracking participation of American Indians, you'll see that the blue lines show you the number, the white lines underneath are the percent of the total student population that American Indians comprise. So in the very last cell on the right, you'd see that we have over 2,300 American Indians enrolled across the university system, which comprise 5% of the total student population.
Thanks, Tyler. I got a quick question. I don't see any data related to the tribal colleges. Do you have any of that information fresh on your mind related to enrollment numbers?
Mr. Chair, we do have access to their enrollment through a different data source. But I don't have those figures, enough fresh in my mind to be able to update you on those.
Great. As we move forward, and this is something that I know that's very important to Regent Robinson, important to the board, I think as partners with us in the tribal colleges, at least including their enrollment data, as we look at the perspective, would not only be valuable. It looks to me, some of the demographic numbers I see in the state that we're serving less than the proportion of American Indian population in our state, and my hunch is through the tribal colleges we're seeing a much higher participation rate. And I know that Regent Robinson's been working on a couple of collaborative ideas related to working closer with the tribal colleges, and that information would certainly be great, but I appreciate this.
You bet.
Any questions or thoughts, Regent McLean?
I have one more slide we can pull up and let Winnie click on that. You'll recognize it as it's a mirror of our retention data that I presented yesterday by campus, but this is just for American Indians on the campuses of the Montana University system. So it kind of gives you an idea of sort of the flexibility of our data, also what we can produce for any individual type of student by student demographics and profiles. There's a lot in here, and it means something different for each campus. I'm sure Brandy would have went into some details and efforts related to retention in American Indians. I'm going to stick just on the data side of this and let you kind of move through this document and answer any questions if you have any, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McLean, did you have a question or comment? Thank you. Regent Tuss.
So Tyler, if I get this correct, we actually are having more American Indians in the Montana University system, even though the overall student population, we're seeing a dip. Is that, do I got this correct?
No, Mr. Chair, Regent Tuss, you know, it's difficult to say that because we switched the way we categorize and collect the data for ethnicity in fall 2011. Though I would say that we'd have to jump back to the next slide. We have made incremental progress in increasing the number of Native Americans. I know we have individual stories at each campus that we could go through, but I think as a system we are making progress. It's not blowing the doors off of enrollment, but we are continually improving the percent of our enrollment.
Follow-up question, do we have any sense about what the American Indian numbers are on the tribal colleges and whether or not that is seeing an increase or decrease?
Mr. Chair, Regent Tuss, well, we do have a sense. I'm not going to be able to freshly tell you what those enrollment numbers are. We can put that together. This would be something that sounds like it'd be interest of the board that we'd bring back and show you trends of overall for the state of Montana enrollment of Native American Indians. Very easily, we can put something like that together for you.
Mr. Chairman, do you recall the gender data with regard to Native American attendance? Gender data?
Split by gender. Mr. Chair, Regent Williams, I don't recall it. Again, something that is a very easy update for us. We can send you even a report in between meetings, no problem.
Yeah.
But I do not have that information on the top of my...
It would also be interesting to know that same data, gender data, with regard to enrollment on all the campuses. Particularly, you do it in a 10-year period, but particularly over the past 5-6 years. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Regent Williams, we'll note that and we'll provide you that information.
Thank you, and I apologize. I was getting an answer to a question with President Cruzado. One of the conversations as far as trying to drive more participation with this particular population in our system has been trying to address the issue of waivers versus direct real money to incentivize. The waivers not providing much incentive for campuses to go pursue participation versus hard dollars going to it. And I'm reminded that in all of the transition with everything that I don't think that's been picked up. So Clay, I don't see him. Maybe Tyler, you can grab that conversation and maybe come prepared to help us see if there is a way for us to quantify or at least understand what a possible different approach to trying to incentivize that enrollment would be. I would appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, we'd be glad to grab onto that. Our Student Financial Services Office, newly ramped up in the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education, is well positioned to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. One of the areas that I think the board had a significant conversation around was growing dual enrollment opportunities. And as I make a mental reflection on our list of where we offer our dual enrollment opportunities, I'm not sure if we had many, if any, on our American Indian reservations. And I would ask the campuses to make a concerted effort to grow dual enrollment opportunities in all of our communities. And as they do, to make sure that those opportunities for dual enrollment coursework are extended to our student population on our American Indian reservations as well, so that we can grow that pipeline and see these numbers increase. So I would ask the campuses to reflect on how most effectively they could address that.
Any other comments or questions related to this report? Deputy Commissioner Trevor, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, that's all right, Trevor. A few years ago, I was asked to give a commencement address and accepted, of course, at a tribally controlled community college. And so, as I suppose one should, I did a little research before I spoke with them. And I told them this: when I graduated from college, there were in that graduating class, the class of that year, there were 60 Native Americans who received bachelor's degrees. That wasn't 60 in my class, that was 60 in the nation. The year I spoke to that group, with further research, I found out there were 20 times that many, that year, the year I spoke to them, 20 times that many doctorate degrees won by Native American college students. We can see that the increases aren't enough. But the most successful of all ethnic groups in America with regard to percentage increase of graduation rates, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees are American Indians, American Native Americans, beyond any other ethnic group. Now, they started from a low thing, so percentages can be misleading, but the point is, they're doing it. And we have to help them continue to do it. Thank you.
Any other comments, Madam President?
Yeah, this is a good opportunity for me to give a shout out to our high schools in eastern Montana, particularly. I had a wonderful opportunity about 2 weeks ago of going to 3 high schools in southeastern Montana in Crowd Reservation. And each of them is doing a wonderful job. And I want to specifically thank the students and the staff and the teachers from Harding High School, because they invited me not only to make remarks, but actually to lead a pledge. And they brought the freshman class and the students who had committed to graduate from high school. And each of them had a pledge card in front of them, and it was very powerful. It was a powerful experience, and I still remember some of the words. I'm saying, I pledge that I will graduate no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult it is. I will graduate, and I will do this, and then each of them will fill in the blank. I will do this for my family, or I will do this for my mother. And it was a pretty moving experience. So congratulations to those schools who are making very specific strides and being very deliberate in what they're doing every day and reaching out and asking for help, so that it is finally understood that there is no division between K-12 and higher education, but that we are all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Great anecdote. Anything further on that item? Great. Item F, and I want to preface this with a couple of comments. This effort falls under our focus as a board on affordability. And as we look at what we are pledging to do to the state through our strategic plan, affordability is one of the 4 or 5 top priorities. And as it is with a set of initiatives as complex as ours, they can't always act in congruence with each other. The access versus quality conversation. In this case, I fear that on occasion this board loses focus of this priority because of other priorities that we surface in our discussions here and in the votes that we make. And as we've articulated very well, this board has a top priority that's been given a lot of agenda time and been given a lot of focus, and deservingly so. Affordability is my top priority. I stand behind the board's top priority, but this is my top priority. And I'm going to continue to advocate for it, and would ask, Madam Chair, as you continue to craft our agendas, that you can please carve out time to highlight and focus and push forward the efforts related to affordability. It is not only of national concern. Ron pointed out to me yesterday, our state debt loads, our average state debt loads have once again gone up since we've last met. This is an issue that we can impact by not only continually providing focus on, but as we frame our other agendas, recognize that those decisions we make possibly have negative impacts on this particular topic. It's very important to me. So I want to make that statement, then preface the introduction of this conversation to highlight and thank the members of this Financial Literacy and Affordability Task Force, largely comprised of financial aid officers from across the system who have committed a tremendous amount of time and when given resources that we creatively found within our own budget to match outside dollars, not relying on political wins, but taking assertiveness and finding them, have distributed a tremendous amount of money across the system and are thrilled with the immediate impact that our students are feeling right now related to that. So with that, I introduce Mr. Muffick, and thank you again for the leadership you've been providing in your new role in this office. And please, if you have an opportunity to point out a couple of the examples of these folks on the task force and the good work they're doing, I look forward to you having an opportunity to share that.
Certainly. Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Members of the board, again, I'm Ron Muffick, Director of Student Financial Services within the Commissioner's Office. I have here a financial literacy update, but before I start with that, I want to talk about, as Regent Buchanan touched on, the Affordability Task Force. We came to this board in May, I believe, and with 3 recommendations: to increase need-based aid, to provide centralized default prevention services to address the increase in default rates, and then the third was to develop a coordinated and collaborative financial literacy program throughout the system. And the third one is what I'm going to focus on here today. As Regent Buchanan mentioned, we had a conversation yesterday. We have some new numbers from the 2011-12 academic year. Our average bachelor degree now, 64% of our students are borrowing, and they've crossed over the threshold of $25,000 in the average debt. It's $25,140. Even more disturbing is our associate degrees. 71% of our associate degree recipients are borrowing now, and borrowing over $18,000 for an associate degree. So that just sort of underscores how important the financial literacy piece is as part of our affordability task force. So we can reach out to these students and talk to them about making smart financial decisions and borrowing decisions. So the third item that we talked about from the Affordability Task Force was the financial literacy coordinated collaborative approach. We want to strengthen the financial literacy programs in the state in an effort to reduce student debt and provide a coordinated and collaborative approach that targets at-risk students and also addresses the entire student population and develops best practices. So that's what we did. As Regent Buchanan mentioned, we were fortunate enough to receive the College Access Challenge Grant. It was a $1.5 million federal grant designated to the Commissioner's Office by Governor Schweitzer. We took $700,000 of that and put it into the need-based aid program, which I can touch on a little bit here. And then we took $400,000 of that to address the financial literacy piece. Of that $400,000, we're going to take $300,000 of that and sub-grant it out to campuses to develop campus-based financial literacy programs that address the issues that we've identified, that put together the best practices so that we can develop a financial literacy program so that we can talk about and address all these issues that students are having with affordability. We're on a pretty short track there. We applied for the funds on July 5th through the federal process. We received the funds on August 15th. We developed a request for proposal process that was released by September 1st, released to all campuses, and advised the campuses they had until October 1st to apply for these subgrants. We received 8 different proposals from 6 university system campuses and 2 tribal campuses. We did the review process between October 2nd and October 15th, and then we notified the campuses of the awards on the 16th. All of the campuses that were applied were funded at some level, and they range from $7,500 to almost $80,000. We have $291,000, which we intend to award 2 campuses. There's various different takes on how to approach things. Different campuses have different ideas. We put together some best practices, asked them to include them in the request for proposal, but also to expand from those, so we can get together with these campuses a year from now, sit down and say, okay, what worked here? What can we take away from your approach that we can apply at other campuses throughout the system, so that we have a coordinated, I keep saying this, coordinated and collaborative approach, but an approach that makes sense, so that we have a consistent theme and consistent message to help these students. Our next step will be ironing out details through the implementation process, the implementation of the programs, and then, as I said, sitting down probably next summer and saying, all right, what's working here? What can we take away? And what can we do in future years here? We'll figure out a way to get this funded going forward, and so that we can continue to address this affordability issue. So that's my report on the financial literacy piece here. Up on the screen there, you can see what campuses applied and what were funded. The other piece I wanted to talk about was the need-based aid program. We took a different approach to this need-based aid than we historically have done. We are trying to be much more targeted and precise with the dollars that we have. In the past, you could say we've taken more of a shotgun approach. This time we're taking much more of a targeted, precise approach. We did some research on expected family contribution. We looked at students that are Pell eligible. In Montana, we have this issue where people make enough money where a lot of them don't qualify for Pell grants, but they don't make enough money to save to send their kids to college. So there's that middle income, lower middle income targeted group that we looked at here under the expected family contribution, which is a calculation that the Federal Central Processing Service does through the FAFSA process. But we figured out that students that had an expected family contribution between $3,000 and $8,000 were actually receiving less aid, financial aid on the average, than students with less of an EFC or the average student in the university system. So we looked at that. There were 697 students, which fit in perfectly with this $700,000 pot that we have. And we decided to do $1,000 awards for these 697 students. And we also put some parameters on there. They're first-time, full-time resident students. So we want to impact the Montana students. And we also looked at it as, we've had a lot of conversations about incentivizing financial aid. What we did was we added a piece in there. And when I say we, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. These are members of the Affordability Task Force that are, as Todd said, the financial aid directors that volunteered their time, and we made a subgroup out of there. Brandy Payne at MSU, Kent McGowan at the University of Montana, Ricky Jones at Western, and Leslie Weldon at MSU Billings, and Lauren Lancaster at Miles Community College. So we had a good cross-section there. With the incentivized piece, getting back to that, we determined that we will award these $1,000 grants to these students, these 697 resident, first-time, full-time students, in the spring if they complete satisfactory academic progress in the fall. So it's incentivizing them to complete the satisfactory academic progress, and they'll get $1,000 in the spring semester, which we hope will reduce their student loan debt and also incentivize them to progress towards a degree. First year, it's not going to have a lot of an impact because it's something they're going to get that they aren't even aware of, but this is something that we can market going forward, do outreach about for next year through the financial aid offices to encourage these students to move forward. That ends my report, Regent Buchanan, and I'm willing to take any questions.
That's great. Please stay there. And I wanted to summarize some of the things that I'm seeing here. I see that 2 of our partners in the in the tribal schools applied here. That's fantastic. That's the kind of inclusiveness that I think we're all asking for. I would like you maybe to talk a little bit about, as you look at the larger funds that were distributed, what some of the best practices you all think at this stage, earned that higher award, and what your mechanism for kind of distributing those ideas and policies to the other campuses might be.
Certainly, Regent Buchanan. The best practices, we had a list of 8 of the best practices. To give you an idea, we wanted a designated person at each campus that was responsible for financial literacy. We wanted a campus-wide advisory council that was developed throughout the campus, not just, say, financial aid or not just, say, the business office, but something that includes student government, admissions, student success, financial aid, student services, TRIO, all of these different groups that touch students so that we can make sure that this becomes something that's embedded throughout the culture where students, no matter who they're dealing with, there's that financial literacy, financial piece throughout their interaction with campus offices. We also talked about, in best practices, having using the Montana University system information. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of lenders, a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of for-profits that provide financial literacy information to colleges who then provide them to students. And there's some strings attached there. There's advertising on there for credit cards. There's advertising on there for private loans. So you have to be real careful about what information you use. So we encourage the use of the MUS.edu prepare and pay section for the participants. So that was a piece of it. And then we included some specific topics that we wanted these campuses to include in their financial literacy education: budgeting, debt management, savings, teaching students about credit reports, credit scores, loan forgiveness programs, all that. So the campuses that incorporated the most of these best practices received the highest scores and thus received the largest funding. In addition to that, we asked them to expand on that and become more innovative and more creative. We had some campuses who are going to use peer mentoring, for example. So they're going to train students to talk to students about their financial health or financial decisions. So it was a long, arduous process that we went through. We had a technical call with the campuses before we did the request for proposal review to make sure everyone understood what we were looking for. And we think we did a pretty good job of sorting through that. We were encouraged that we had a couple tribals that applied. We have an individual in the commissioner's office that has been a focus. That's been her focus, is to make sure that the tribals were engaged in this.
That's fantastic. It is disturbing to see that quite a few campuses did not apply. Whatever it takes to drive home the importance of this conversation is something I'm gonna hold you accountable for, Ron. Get engaged with those campuses and get them at the table. This is a conversation that this board has said that we need to elevate, and to not see every campus, at least even submitting an application, is somewhat disturbing to me. I don't know if Adam Cook is in the crowd, a student at Montana Tech. If he is, come up here, Adam. I wanted to put you on the spot and ask you a question. Your point yesterday, Clay, about the conversation at which you related to the lack of exclusivity between merit-based and need-based. I think that you heard what Ron just talked about, putting that component of satisfactory completion being a criteria for receiving these grants, this $1,000 grant per student. Unsolicited yesterday, this young man from Montana Tech, who I understand is from your backyard, Angela, came up to me and said, what are we doing about this exact issue? So Adam, if you wouldn't mind maybe framing the question to us or any of the insight you've got related to that, because it's the students, as Regent Williams would have put it, we're trying to create this bargain with. And to have you come up and unsolicited really struck me as a sign, a tone that we should be doing more of this. But I'd love it if you had thoughts that you'd like to share with us related to it.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, thanks Regent Buchanan for this opportunity to come up here and speak. But my concern was with the way the grant system works. As it currently exists, it is flawed in the sense that there is no accountability. We give out this grant money, and every time we do, we're taking a gamble. And what's our return on investment? I think I'm not exactly sure on this statistic, but I'm pretty sure it's around 30%. So the other 70% of the grant money we give out is lost. It's a sunk cost, we can't get it back. And that's what's more important, is that that's money that we could give to students who are producing, who are finishing their degrees, and have taken it serious and have some accountability. So that was my thought on the thing is how do we create more accountability, and what I would recommend is having it be more like a loan. So the student inherits the debt, it's his debt, he owns it or she owns it until graduation, and upon completion they're absolved of their debt, but until then they're responsible for it. And that way it creates a disincentive for them to not quit school. So there's a disincentive. If they do quit, they have to pay back that money. But it reduces the gamble. It makes it essentially 100%. So students who are getting grant money, they complete school. So that was my thought on it.
Adam, thank you. I mean, this is so telling. Here's a student saying, hold me accountable. And I believe that as a Montanan, as a probably current, definitely future taxpayer to this state, this is the type of attitude that we need to incorporate with our policies. We discussed it at the last meeting, did not take an opportunity to include this type of incentivization. So as we talk about any sort of distribution of grant money, loan, whatever it is that we have control over. Now, I understand and the Pell system is out of our control at the moment. That doesn't mean we don't have a voice at that level to try to incentivize this. But to have it come to us from a student, to me, is remarkable. And Adam, I'm so appreciative for your broader perspective and leadership related to this. Thank you. And I'm excited to say that he's going to get plugged in with this financial literacy work group, and really look forward to an elevated student voice at that level. So thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Regent Buchanan, and that, I don't know what which he paid to have the white paper done, but Adam could have done it for him. That's essentially what that conversation was about.
Let's make sure we're doing this.
Yeah.
They are not mutually exclusive,
No.
and we've got the opportunity. And as I think just demonstrated, it sounds to me like the students are willing to make that bargain with us.
And that's along those lines. That's exactly what they're talking about. Some means to hold people accountable for progress. If progress isn't made, the awards have to be stripped out and give to students that will make progress with them and are willing to work toward that end and toward the degree completion that we're looking for. And so that's right on track.
Good. I again find this conversation and the state of Montana seems to be a step ahead of the national dialogue, and the implementation responsibility lays on this board here. We've got to use every opportunity that we have to implement this line of thinking if we intend to be making the impact that we think it should. I don't think I have any other comments. Any other questions or comments related to this discussion, Regent Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I think I have an essential disagreement, or partial disagreement with that. I understand the value of accountability among students. If nothing else, it's a great learning tool. After all, that's why they go to school, to learn. But there are a lot of moving pieces in loans and grants. And many of those moving pieces are not under the student's control. Graduation's not entirely under their control. Mom dies, dad dies, family moves away, they can't get back in school, whatever. That penalty's pretty high on that kid. Again, I'll just stop there. But again, I understand the accountability piece, but we also have to consider all of that family and that student's, what do they call them, moving pieces. We don't want grants are a gamble. The federal government's always known that, but it always thought education was worth the gamble. Now, the federal government in the beginning didn't know it was going to lose almost every year on the gamble. It thought it might win once in a while. And in the end, education pays off, but it does lose whatever it is Ron may know for this state. But the federal government generally does lose 60 to 70% of its gamble. But again, I don't know about holding out the penalty for something that isn't necessarily the student's fault. And then, of course, once you start putting those kind of amendments in the law, well, if a member of the family dies, if you lose your job, there's an exception, then you have a very convoluted piece of legislation. So it's difficult. It's not as easy as it sounds, I guess. And I know that Mr. Buchanan understands that these, being in investments, he knows these things aren't easy. Yeah.
Any other comments, thoughts from members of the board? Excellent, Ron, thank you so much. Any other comments from members of the body on this subject?
Well, Ron, do you know the grant loss in Montana?
I would know that our graduation rate for the Pell Grant recipients is about 29-30%. So if you're considering not graduating as a loss, then that would be 70%, Regent Williams.
Jeff, or Professor Renz?
I'd second Regent Williams' comments and point out that before you ever undertook a program to recover grant money, you'd have to consult with counsel.
Thank you.
Regent Buchanan?
Yeah.
I think those are very good points, but I don't know if it's just a either-or scenario. I think there's a lot of things we can do. Pell, if we're talking about Pell, that's federal legislation. There's some complications with Pell, but there's also a lot of money that we award in the state. And I don't know if it needs to be an all-in or not. There's a lot of things we can do to incentivize students to make progress. There's things we can do with waivers to incentivize students to make progress. We use a lot of waivers across the system. There's ways I think we could drive at higher completion rates and progress from a student accountability piece that would benefit those students that want to work hard and graduate. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So I completely agree, and it is difficult to draw lines in the sand and then figure out how you're going to jump back and forth across them, and so that will be a challenge. But it comes back to other discussions we've had. Maybe there's ways that we can incent that is as effective as penalizing, but I think there's just things that we can look at in there, and there's funding sources to do that. And see where we go with them and see what kind of progress we can make and what kind of success they have without tackling every dime that's going in.
I completely agree with that, and as we have discussed with numerous topics here, this is not a one-size-fits-all system. I will say, though, that we are doing exactly what Witchy says the system needs to do with this new program that Ron's stewarding. At the leadership of a student voice, of financial aid officers, satisfactory progress is required for future grants. It's not a penalty. It is required for future grants. And in my mind, I haven't thought out Adam's idea about the loan. I think it's wise and probably extremely appropriate for a portion of how we do things. But with this new amount of money that we're putting into the system, which is significant, talk to any of these financial aid officers, $1,000 grant to a student who is need-based qualified is a big contribution towards their expense. And in exchange for that, we're asking them to progress. So again, I can't express my appreciation for the focus on this topic, and this affordability conversation is comprehensive. It's time to degree, which you've all heard me say is something I want us to focus on more. It's this accountability measure. I think that the cultural impacts that I'm hearing about the freshman 15 and the culture that's being adopted on campuses to help students understand this is all part of it. And again, the complexities are there, but that does not, to me, offer the opportunity to throw up a white flag. I think we need to push forward on this and push forward with every opportunity that we have. So, Ron, I'm very appreciative for your time and your work on this. Keep it up and get these other campuses to put in applications for funding so they're engaged in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to item G. Deputy Commissioner Moisey, the Veterans Work Group recommendations. Who's taking the lead on that?
I'll turn that over to Ron.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan and Mr. Moisey. This Veterans Initiative, it's a pretty quick update I have here. This is a work group that we put together last summer. We've had Regent interest in this. We've had interest from our Senator's office. Senator Tester's representative, as I've mentioned before, is on this work group. I received a call this week from Senator Baucus's office, and they want representation on this work group as well. I think that underscores the importance and the focus that folks have that are in the know on how big the veterans' impact in higher education is going to be and continues to be. I think I've talked to this group before. I know I provided data in hard copy last meeting that we have about 2,500 veterans in the system right now. We expect that to double over the next 5 years. So we're talking about 5,000 students that are veterans. So we put together this work group to make sure that we, as the MUS, continue to excel as a veteran-friendly system and make sure that we provide the services and financial aid and instruction that today's veterans need to access and complete higher education. This work group, also made up of various members of the MUS campus community, we've come up with 3 recommendations. These recommendations are pretty straightforward. We need a coordinated system approach to all veterans' policies and issues. This is something where our office, at the Commissioner's office, we can work with the VA, the Department of Labor, Military Affairs. I have found out over the last few months, there's a number of meetings that have taken place with the Department of Labor and the VA to talk about getting veterans back engaged in education and in the workforce. We haven't been involved in those conversations. We need to step up and become a voice from higher ed to be involved so that these veterans know what's out there and what's available to them. The other piece is a consistent campus-level approach to veterans issues and policies. We put together a best practice list. That's one of your attachments. There's, I think, 15 best practices on there. Our services to veterans, we do a lot for them in the system, but we're kind of all over the board. For example, U of M, MSU have dedicated veteran space, but Western does not. So we want to make sure that if we put together these best practices and roll them out to the campuses so that veterans receive a consistent level of service. And the third one is develop a need-based aid program that supplements federal funding. An example of these are if you serve active duty for a year, you only get 60% of your VA funding. There's a lot of upfront costs applying for admissions, for example, that the veterans don't have funding for. If someone's on active duty, and I think this was discussed a little bit yesterday, if someone's on active duty and they want to take classes, online classes, through our system, the VA has a quirk where they will pay tuition, but they won't pay fees. They won't pay the building fees. They won't pay a lot of the fees. So we could look at a need-based aid program or an aid program that supplements that piece so that those that are on active duty that want to take a class from us, we can supplement that for them. Those are examples of the things that this group has come up with. Next steps on this, we're just ready to move forward. If there is a region initiative, a legislative initiative, or something comes up, we've heard that there will be a number of bills in the legislature regarding veterans issues. And we just want to make sure that we're prepared and that this board knows that we have the information here and are ready to move on a moment's notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. I'm curious about how we're doing vis-a-vis other states. How are we treating our veterans with regard to access to higher education? Do you have any sense of that? We all know the statistics with regard to how many Montana veterans have served this country, and it's a very, very high percentage. I've seen statistics that we're #1 in the nation, this state. Are we #1 in providing benefits to them once they get back? Do you have any sense of that?
Mr. Chair, Regent Tuss, it's more of an opinion, more something I feel than I know. I wouldn't say we're #1. I would say we need to do a better job from a coordination standpoint. I think if I've gone out to all, not to take a shot at the campuses, but I've gone out to the websites and gone, okay, if I'm a veteran and I want to go here and find out what I need to do to get enrolled as a veteran and to access higher education, I was a little bit lost. So I think we can do a better job in that respect. I think we can do a better job partnering with the other entities that I mentioned. Minnesota State University System and College System, for example, has an entire microsite off their website that's dedicated to veterans that provides them all sorts of links to all different places where they can get, that provide the resources where they can get services. And that's where I'd like to see us step next.
Thank you for working on this. This is a big priority of this board. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Regent Buchanan, Chairman Buchanan, Regent Tuss. The other thing, I think we mentioned some yesterday, so I won't go very far back into it, but CLEP and ACE and some of those things, we're also not doing what a lot of states are in that regard, and that's something we need to move full speed ahead, and we certainly will. There's a lot we can do there, and in terms of a legislative initiative, this is something that I think as a group we really need to continue to push forward. There's lots of interest on it from a board level, And it's just the right thing to do. We need to do it.
Just to reiterate that, I do come here with a specific message from Regent Kraus to prompt aggressive action with the governor's office, with the legislature in regards to funding for the Veterans Education Program. So, at the call of Regent Kraus, we all have a job to do to make sure that we advocate tirelessly to get this placed in the budget and then advocate for it in the legislature. So I too want to thank you for your work and your coordination of the group that has come together, and I look forward to seeing perhaps what this group will look like perhaps in the next half a year, because it sounds to me like it's morphing as we speak, because there is so much, as Regent Tuss says, enthusiasm around supporting veterans education in Montana. And I hope that the next time we ask you the question, perhaps a year from now, you will be able to give us perhaps a more positive answer as to where we are, and I hope that we have taken the steps to get there. So thank you for your efforts.
Chairman Buchanan, the other thing I would mention is we also have a real friend and I think a real leader on the national scene in terms of Senator Tester, who's now been reelected. Veterans is something that he's very passionate about, and this isn't a political rally, it's just who he is. I mean, he's talked more about veterans than most, and that's a resource for us, obviously, in this state, and we will, as a commissioner's office, certainly reach out there and have had good conversations with his staff, but of where we can interact with his staff and make good opportunities in Montana, too. There's a lot of movement behind this, and we'll do what we can to move it forward.
Mr. Chair, Regent Tuss, I think there are many things in place that we can be very proud of in terms of what we've done for veterans in recent years around the system. Veteran centers, the Yellow Ribbon Program, increased advising and counseling, and so on. So there are some really nice things that have happened. Quite proud of the way that, as a system, we've responded to the veterans. Having said that, the numbers have increased pretty rapidly, and the services needed have increased pretty rapidly, and so it has been admittedly a challenge to move resources into those areas quickly enough to address the needs. And so I would say we're a long way from perfection in our services to the veterans, and we have much room for improvement there. I think all of us would say that we're completely dedicated to getting as close to that as we can.
Great comments. I'd add to Regent McLean's voice of Jeff, of Regent Krause's. The comments that he asked me to pass on are encouragement to sharpen this proposal, add some specifics. Let's look at some dollar amounts and where those monies are going. A couple ideas that I remember him saying are support to spouses of veterans to go to school, those kinds of things. But as Angela articulated, not only advocating for the leadership that we hope the legislature and the governor's office would provide in this subject, but he would certainly like us to take the initiative to champion our own ideas as well with these types of things. So clearly, as Regent Tuss articulated, it's a focus of members of this board, and this is a great start. Let's keep digging in. Any other comments or thoughts on this? Fantastic, Ron. You've been busy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, academic and program reviews. I think we're going to deviate from protocol a little bit on this. During our committee conversation, we were remembering and going through some of the dialogue we had at our planning meeting related to this, and some good comments related to this process surfaced, and the questions that surfaced and kind of stuck in my mind is what function is this playing? We talk about a broader prioritization effort where we are trying to align programs to match strategic missions. This is a policy driven by us years ago that asks the campus on a 7-year basis to item or individually look at a lot of programs. So what we thought we would do instead of going through this process today like we have is put it in front of the board to pick up the dialogue from our planning session and see where we want to go with this. Is it a prerogative of this board to continue to do these reviews as we've been doing them? Do we want to change how we've been doing them? Maybe some comments from campus leadership as to how effective they are. You've made a very strong case to us that internally this process is happening a lot. You're clearly motivated to strengthen programs and strengthen what we're doing, and maybe this particular process in front of the Regents is either redundant or maybe not as productive as we think it might be. Clearly being informed of some of the changes that are occurring is a priority to us, but instead of going into these reviews today, we'd like to carry on that conversation from the last time, and I see President Engstrom grabbing a microphone. Maybe you can help us give a bit of perspective related to this process.
Yeah, thanks, Regent Buchanan, members of the board. I think that this program review process that you see in front of you, we just need to be clear that this is distinct from and serves a different purpose than the program prioritization, program alignment discussion that you've been having. I really think that the value of this program, this 7-year program review process, is indeed focused on internal improvement of these individual programs and adjustments of these individual programs. As I think we've discussed before, in our case, we bring in outside experts from other universities to examine these programs as a routine part of the program review. And as a result of those program reviews, we've made some pretty substantive changes. And I've spoken about some of those in the past. The journalism program, for example, completely redid its master's program, really based on input from a program review. And so they moved it from a general journalism master's to a very niche-focused and highly effective environmental and science journalism program. And that came out in large measure from one of these program reviews. The biology program rewrote much of its undergraduate curriculum based on the feedback that they received from a program review in which they brought in, I believe, 3 outside people for their particular team. So I think that this process serves a valuable role in that ongoing quality assurance of programs and most importantly, the opportunity for self-examination of what a given program is doing in its teaching, research, and outreach missions. Much of that is also done through accreditation efforts when they apply at the discipline level. So if there is an accrediting agency for a given discipline, that's a periodic process on the time frame of 5 to 10 years, depending on the accreditation agency. And much of the same thing happens at that time. And so for the most part, we try to schedule this 7-year program review process in a way that overlaps with those outside accrediting timelines. Doesn't always work perfectly, but they serve much the same role in many cases. So even if the Regents decide that this process is not helpful to you, I will say that at the University of Montana, Missoula, we will continue some sort of a process like this because I believe firmly that it is a valuable self-improvement process. It may not be the kind of information that you're looking for at the moment, but it is an ongoing effort to keep our programs in touch with what's going on nationally by bringing in outside people, and really serves to, in a way, sort of force a periodic discussion about what are we doing as a program? Do we have the right curriculum? Do we have the right research portfolio? Those kinds of things. So it does serve a valuable purpose, but it is a very distinct purpose from the prioritization / alignment discussions that we're having.
I appreciate that perspective, and I think you're right. We've kind of put this on the agenda, and I think we look at it for that, and we've not been getting that. That does by no means diminish the value of the process. And I think perhaps it sounds like this journalism is a good example of kind of a best practice idea. I mean, to me, seeing the reviews is very informative. A lot of information in each of them. I've been through each of these, and it's obvious a lot of good internal perspective has been generated through it. I think you're right, though, that we need to be clear that if we're looking for prioritization, we need to determine that that's a priority and not use this model, but some other model for it. Madam President.
Yes, Regent Buchanan, I second those comments too. And I'm just reminding myself about some comments that were made by Regent Thiel about what would be a valuable tool for the Regents. And what he has expressed in different occasions is that at this moment, the Regents do not have a mechanism to compare the same information. So this is a very delicate angle because we want to empower the campuses to craft that review process using their local expertise. But at the same time, it would be good if we could agree on some common language or on some common measures that will preserve the autonomy of those programs, if you will, at the campus level, but at the same time, furnish the kind of information that will enable and empower the Regents to compare and to make decisions about programs.
Paul, Angela, the rest of our board is disappearing. As the tone of the conversation in our planning was, let's dig in here. And I think we're hearing a couple of really good ideas. Do you guys have any further thoughts related to the direction this needs to go?
Nothing specific, I don't think, to the direction. I think that we as a board need to reach a conclusion as to just exactly what is our goal.
Mm-hmm.
If we ask for program review instead of program prioritization, I think that we need to wrap our hands around that specifically, as what is our objective around that? And can we, and I think once we do, then perhaps we create this mechanism, this rubric, whatever it may look like. But until we get to that point, and I just don't sense that we're there, and I'm not saying we can't get there, but it just seems that we lack a clear objective or goal or guidelines for just exactly what it is we're looking for. And I am hearing that we have a process in place that is working on our campuses and serving our campuses in a meaningful way. And I would just caution us in moving forward to ask for program prioritization, because it sounds to me like these program reviews would still take place, and I get very worried about already confined resources being stretched too thin.
Well, maybe Neil, let's start with looking at the policy and how it was drafted, what the intent was, and until further notice. I certainly do find it informative when we look at these, and I mean, maybe as we move forward, kind of a best practices report approach, some of the highlights with one or two particular reviews on that cycle would be some way to not only condense it, but provide learning opportunities that are specific to each of these campuses and how other campuses might share and learn in that process. Yeah, Royce.
Regent Buchanan, just one more comment. If the board decided that the present 7-year review process was not that helpful or whatever, I said that we would continue it, and we would, but I would say also that we would probably change it somewhat too. I mean, I think we have a certain format to be presented here, and that is pretty much determined by board policy or board expectations. And so I think that we would probably make some changes to that review process if it no longer was really a board report kind of a thing. And in that regard, one suggestion I might have would be to ask Neil to get maybe together with the people who coordinate this process on the various campuses, Associate Provost Walker Andrews on our campus, and just put some creative thought into what this might look like if sort of the restrictions that are now in place or the expectations that are now in place were opened up or removed. It might be a profitable discussion, Neil. So.
That's a fantastic idea. So once again, it's so much fun to give you projects, Neil. You got another task force of some sort to create good comments. Thank you. Everybody comfortable with that dialogue? Any further digging in here from anybody else interested? Chancellors? Deans, everybody's good? All right. Well, thank you for the preparation of those reports. If you have not had a chance to look at them, they're very informative. There's some great introspection occurring, and I'm appreciative for the work. Moving on to item I, my sense is it's going to be Mr. Abbott. Are you joining us for this? Come on, you can sit there, join us up here, whatever you'd like. Ongoing conversation with a commitment from this board to due the diligence associated with making sure that we're getting the multitude of goals through this conversation accomplished. We did get some budgetary information provided, which was very helpful. Thank you. And my sense is part of your time this morning is going to address that and help us navigate that. Yes. Mr. Abbott, thanks.
Chair Buchanan, members of the board, for the record, I'm Doug Abbott, Provost at Montana Tech. Before I get into my update on the PhD program, I'd like to spend 30 seconds to inform the Regents and those in the room. There are currently 3 football teams playing football in Montana. There's 2 teams that will play tomorrow, but as I speak, the Montana Tech Ore Diggers are currently on a charter airplane on their way to Sioux City, Iowa to compete in the first round of the NAIA National Playoffs. So. Many of you know Coach Green. I saw him on campus Wednesday, and he used one of his classic Greenisms. I asked him, "How are you doing?" And he says, "Provost Abbott, we're in the playoffs. I haven't been this excited since I found out that my fiance's father owned the liquor store." And so it's a good time to be an ore digger. In terms of an update on the PhD, you will remember the excitement at the September Board of Regents meeting in Butte when this topic came up at the breakfast, and a lot of enthusiasm in the room. Since that time, a 12-person panel has been created, which is comprised of 4 representatives from each of the 3 campuses involved in this collaborative PhD. The group met on October 4th to discuss strategy, goals, whatnot. Homework was assigned. The group got back together on October 24th in Butte, discussed progress, and assigned more homework. The group is going to meet December 4th in Butte. And what this group is doing is they're revising the level 2 proposal that was provided to you in July to incorporate issues identified during the AAAS review as well as the peer review that came to Montana Tech. The plan as it currently exists is to get a revised level 2 proposal to this group for consideration at the March meeting. And this revised proposal needs to be in such a condition so that it can go through the processes again on each of the 3 campuses, the faculty senate, the graduate councils, et cetera. So hopefully we'll be able to pull that off and get you a refined proposal for your March meeting. One other thing I'd like to share with the group is the excitement, at least that Montana Tech is experiencing from the corporate side of things. In October, marketing representatives from a company called American Superconducting came to Montana at the request of Senator Max Baucus. And this team visited MSU Bozeman, then they came over and visited Montana Tech. 3 weeks later, the techno geeky type people from American Superconducting came back to the Montana Tech campus to talk more about what tech can do for them and what they can do for Montana Tech. 1 week after that meeting, Chancellor Blackketter received a personal letter from the president of American Superconducting with a check for $25,000 to support the PhD effort that is currently going on, because this company said we would not exist without the technologies and the knowledge that has been developed in previous material science work, and they were looking forward to working with us. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Provost, could you drill down a little bit more on the corporate commitment to this program? There was great energy at the Butte meeting, and there was kind of a challenge issued by Regent Buchanan to the folks that were supportive from the corporate world in Butte and beyond that are supportive of this particular initiative. Beyond the one example, this is going to be expensive. Beyond the one example that you just gave us, could you speak a little bit more to the other commitments that perhaps are out there from those corporations and business entities that are supportive and express that support at our meeting in Butte?
Regent Tuss, I can speak from the Montana Tech perspective in terms of corporate support. And you'll remember Ron Euland, who has ties with CCAST, Tom McIntyre, who works for REC Silicone, voiced their support for the program. We have a meeting next week with REC to find out what level of support they can provide, and we've got a meeting at the end of the month with CCAST. So the people in the room that Friday morning at that breakfast, they're following through with their commitments that they said that they would do. It's very exciting.
Thank you, Doug, for your presentation, and on my behalf, if you would please express our thanks to the 12 folks who are coming together and meeting regularly on this to flesh out what we as a board have asked for in this regard. And one of those areas, perhaps the focal area, was the area of resources. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the committee work in regards to the resource contributions from each of the campuses and where any shortfalls may still be in regards to that, whether you have it with you there or in a general sense.
Regent McLean, the resource piece will get pretty close scrutiny at this December 4th meeting, because the items that we've talked about in the previous meetings are going to be drivers for the actual budget. So the monetary aspects of this will be flushed out starting in December.
Thank you, and I'm going to express the same kind of curiosity. If we're getting information in December, needing to act in March, that seems, my sense would be if we can work to get, and I think your original budget called for $2 million worth of donations to get this done. Is that right, Doug?
That was the Montana Tech piece, yes.
Okay, right. If we're going to be approving it, I mean, I know I'm going to be much more comfortable putting this on the agenda for discussion in March if we've already made work in that area and generated the pledges associated with it. So if we're still a month away from the specifics, it seems like a quick turnaround to do that. Now, I say that, and in light of Regent Tuss's reference to that community breakfast, I've committed to you guys and Don, Chancellor Blackheader, to help in that effort, and I think it's going to need our help. We're doing a good job of vetting this process, but those folks in that room were there because we were there. And at the request and invitation of these guys, no question. But I think we're the deal makers in this process. And so, I mean, I think we need to be prepared to do what we can to support this institution and the fundraising if we're going to move forward. To get my yes vote, I'm going to want to know that we have those resources in the pipeline, not just proverbially out there.
Right.
Not only am I interested in seeing more of the financial component of it, but did request and look forward to some comparative financial analysis. Is it compare equally to other programs like this that we've undertaken the creation of, and is it enough? And working with some of these other programs that have been created this way, do some retrospective look with the folks that led those initiatives to see if they were accurate and what their pro formas looked like. That all said, we're very appreciative to the response, and it sounds like it's moving forward responsibly. So thank you for the report today, and very much look forward to the specifics related to the budget side of all of this. Any other comments or thoughts from members of the board? Go Ore Diggers, man, that's exciting. Very exciting. An update on the Vet Med Task Force, and I understand that there's some interest in public comment, but I'd like to use this opportunity to kind of check in and remind everybody what we're doing, what the intent is here, and use some time to thank Regent Teal for his leadership on this. Boy, he tackles some tough subjects, doesn't he? He had the 2-year naming process and handled that one with extreme expertise, and this one's turned into be much more robust than I think anybody anticipated. But let's step back to what we're doing here. In the September meeting, this board approved to move forward as a legislative initiative this Vet Med proposal. As part of that, as a direct request from folks who happen to now be in leadership positions in our legislature, to consider adding some sort of suggestion, modification, introduction of a provisional element to touch on the way I would frame it is some sort of protection piece for exactly what we were talking about with Mr. Cook this morning. Protect this investment. Some way to ensure that students who receive these funds are either mandated to come back to Montana or incentivized to come back to Montana after they graduate, required to pay. A variety of proposals were on the table. And so we asked Joe to manage the conversation with the intent of surfacing 3 or 4 recommendations. The idea was to bring them to this meeting, but a couple of things have provided a pause with that deadline. First and foremost is it is a much more robust conversation. There's a lot of interest in it. And thanks to a great interest of participation, the people on this task force, ranging from sitting legislators, including, I think it's the majority leader for the Senate, members of the campus, members of this board, are finding that there's a lot of interest in this, and that's great. So the other thing is the deadline really is not until these things are in front of the legislature, because ultimately these are the decisions they will make. We're asking them to make these decisions. So the thought that we had an intent of one conclusion that this board was going to implement, I don't think that was, I never heard any of us say that was the intent. I think the intent is to continue to work forth to say, okay, in light of these interests, here's 4 or 5 ideas for you, Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, to consider. I understand it's going to be packaged in House Bill 2, so the governor's input is going to be important on this. And if we provide, without singling out one as a preferred choice, a list of options, I really feel like we've done what members of the legislature have asked us to do in this process. So the plan at this stage would be to continue the work of that task force. Again, thanking Regent Teal for his work on that. Certainly invite other ideas to that conversation and come forth in January to hand off to the legislative process the ideas for consideration. By no means mandated from us, implement one of them. Look at these ideas, and if it's your will, Mr. Governor, or Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, please, we are excited about the opportunity to address your ideas and feel like we're responsibly doing so. That said, I don't know if anybody else on our board has any input or ideas to throw in the mix related to this discussion before we ask for some, I know there's some comments that are prepared. Seeing none, anybody who has anything to weigh in, and maybe the folks in the back are kind of make your way up here on doing that, and we look forward to hearing your ideas and input related to this. So thanks for making the time to be with us. Please introduce yourself, state your name, and share with us your ideas.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Deborah Yarbrough. I'm a veterinarian. Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Regents. I'm here on the behalf of the Montana Veterinary Medical Association. I am the president of that association. We are here to show our support for the Montana Cooperative Veterinary Medical Program that Montana State University is looking into. We have a shortage of rural veterinarians. It's a well-known fact, and we are hoping that with this program we can remedy the situation. Part of the reason this would be a good program is because the way that it would be designed is Montanans would have much more input into what students were selected for veterinary school. MSU would be involved, we would have veterinarians involved, obviously Washington State would be involved, but we would have a lot more input. We can maybe weigh heavily those who have a rural background or who are interested in rural practice. The program would also be designed that while these students are in veterinary school at Washington State, they would be allowed to come back with preceptorships in rural practices, and in that aspect they would be exposed to rural life, rural practice as it goes on, possibly even be made aware of jobs that are available in the area. Our thought is if you see that as you are a student, you're more likely to return to rural practice. I think it would be a win situation for the state. Even if all the students that we educate don't come back to the state, it will still benefit us greatly. If only one of the 10 students comes back, we'll still end up in a win situation. We'll still be money ahead than the way we're doing it now. A couple other members, or a couple other veterinarians who are with me are also representing the Farm Bureau and Montana Stock Growers Association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And to be very clear, this board has said this is one of our legislative initiatives, so there's no discussion of us not continuing to push this forward. It is an initiative we are already publicly passing on to the legislature, so we appreciate your support of it, and I certainly don't perceive risk that it's getting stalled.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Dr. Beth Blevins. I'm a large animal veterinarian, but I'm also a member of Montana Farm Bureau, and we raise cattle. The Montana Farm Bureau has over 19,000 members, and we were at the convention just last week in Billings, and 270 delegates voted unanimously in support of this 1+3 program. So that's more input that this is a needed program. The aspect of the program that excites me the most is the preceptorship program. I had the opportunity of having a pre-veterinary student from Michigan ride with me a few summers ago. She was in the area because of working at a guest ranch, and she had no intention of doing any food animal practice, but after she had ridden with me during the summer, she saw the relationship between the large animal veterinarian and the producer and wanted to be a part of that. We come alongside the producer and are an ally in making sure that they succeed, and we're a part of the community and built into it instead of just being a resource person for them. So we strongly support the 1+3 program to bring more people to a realization that they might like that program and like being a large animal veterinarian. And she's decided to do food animal practice as well as equine and small animal because of the experience that she had riding with me. Thank you.
Dr. Blevins, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, now you're the chairman now, or is she?
Of the committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Madam Chair and members of the Regents, I'm Terry Todd. I spoke at the meeting in Butte. I spoke then as the president-elect of the Montana Veterinary Medical Association. I've got a different hat today. I'm a member of the stock growers as well. And so I'm probably pretty biased about this program and very enthusiastic about it. I think this is a proposal that this state can put a real feather in their cap. We can have our own veterinary school. It will draw more students to this state. It will bring more money to this state. It will keep our tax dollars in this state. And it just looks to me like it's a win-win-win all the way. Now, the stock growers have presented a draft resolution that they're going to vote on at their upcoming meeting in broad support of this very topic. So, stock growers are on board as well as the Farm Bureau. Now, on a more personal note, I've worked in large animal practice for the past 35 years. When I first got out of veterinary school, I spent 2 years in North Dakota in a shortage area. I got 65% of my school notes forgiven by being there in a shortage area. That might be something to think about. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think if we, the people of Montana, and the veterinarians of this state have the ability to select the individuals that come into this veterinary program, I think we will have the payback just by them coming back to this state because of the selection of the people that are out there. The students that come from rural areas, they develop a work ethic at a young age, and they're not just playing video games. They're intelligent, they're resourceful. They have leadership skills that are developed a lot of times through being in 4-H, FFA, those type of things. I just think there's a tremendous pool of good rural students out there that we can alleviate this deal. When I spoke before, I was speaking as the only veterinarian in Garfield County. You're talking about 50,000 cows and one veterinarian. I mean, there's room out there. But we've got to take some of the burden off these students when they get out of vet school. Now, I'm one of the 67% of the graduating veterinarians that come back to Montana. After I spent my 2 years in North Dakota, I've been here for another 35 years. And you talk about giving back to the state. I mean, we've paid for so much close-up fruit, bake sales, Girl Scout cookies, 4-H lambs, pigs, steers. I mean, and it was all worth it. A veterinarian in a rural setting is a pillar of the community. They're the people that are on the school boards. They're the fire chief. They're on the hospital boards. These are all things that I've done. And you're just a big part of that community. And I think even if you're only getting 2/3 of these veterinary students from Montana back in the state, as it is now, I think we'll go much higher than that under this proposal. Still, you're getting, I think Mark Maddox has the figures, I think he's talking about $400,000 a year plus 6 jobs created for every veterinarian in this state. Well, I think that's pretty good payback for the $30,000 a year that you put into these veterinarians. At any rate, I won't ramble on. I appreciate your hospitality, and I'm honored to be able to talk to you folks. And I've realized now that you guys are just good people that have a job to do. And when I first spoke to you guys, whenever I first come to that meeting in Butte, I felt like a mule at the Kentucky Derby. I'll tell you what, it was pretty tough on me, but I've gotten over that now. So, if there's any questions, I'd try and answer them.
Dr. Todd, thank you. Your input related to the specifics of this discussion related to the recommendation of provisions is valuable, and I hope and trust that the task force is hearing you. Thank you for that. I think that as I look around and your partners in this discussion, we got to, I can't stop laughing at the mule statement. We got to make sure that we're standing side by side during the legislative session, articulating the message that you just articulated, and I assure you that I will be there, and I know that the rest of us, not only the board members, but the system, are very supportive of moving this forward. So thank you for your leadership on this. Thank you for your citizenship to the state of Montana with the Stock Growers Association, the Veterinarian Association. Kind of find it hard to find time to work, I suspect, but thank you for doing it.
Well, if you need my help on down the road on this, give a call.
We're counting on it. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Todd. Fantastic public comment there. Thank you all. Any other comments on that discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I want to say to the doctor before he leaves that it's, being as I'm from Butte, I want to note that it's damn hard to go to Butte and feel like a mule at the Kentucky Derby. Quite a trick. However, if I may, I'm not sure I'm trying to correct the record here, and I don't want to overtly disagree with any of the good testimony that we've heard from the past 10, 15 minutes. But at least as of a few years ago, it was a matter of record that students from Montana's cities had a much higher graduation rate than students from rural Montana, including farm and ranch kids. Sometimes we live with myths in Montana, and we all enjoy those myths. But we have to recognize them for what they are if we're going to have good, efficient government, business, and education. As of a few years ago, the default rate on student loans was higher from students in rural Montana than they were from students in what we might call urban Montana. That is not to put anybody down. It's not to say that people from one side of the state or the kids from one side of the state are better than the other. It's simply to address that as a fact. I think all our kids are busy playing Nintendo and Pac-Man. Thank you.
Thanks, Regent Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I too want to thank the veterinarians for showing up. We wouldn't be having this conversation without your persistence. As Regent Buchanan talked about, we're supportive of this effort, and these democratic processes are clearly not for the impatient or the faint-hearted. You're neither. We appreciate your service to our state. We appreciate what your industry does for our state, and thank you for being here today.
Chairman Buchanan. And I guess two things. I did mention yesterday that this initiative has made its way into the budget, so that's significant. I did once again, though, misinform you. It's not in House Bill 2. I think it will be in its own bill, which we'll work through the ramifications of that. But I thought yesterday that it was, but I just texted Director Villa, and I think it's in its own. So. We'll work through that process, though, too.
Yeah, it's not good or bad news. That's just the news. Thank you. That's good. We're a little bit past time here, so we'll wrap up. The last item, as you'll recall, we're discussing an accelerated degree option. A couple of the real quick findings, and I'm grateful for the chair's attention to this discussion, and it's helped uncover some really good news about our system. At the moment, there are quite a few students that are already finishing degrees in 3 years, which is exciting, and one of the underlying assets that's making that possible is their high correlation with students that had dual credit or college credit that they were taking in K through 12, which to us strengthens the commitment or the interest in the conversation to do more of that. I would point out in our meeting we had some data that did not reflect accurately what's going on in Billings. We were not capturing a program called University Connections, which, what is it, Rolf, 140 or 100? There's 140 students at the moment currently taking dual credit, but it was exciting to see Anaconda, 50-some students, Missoula, high level of students doing that. And we're identifying this as a critical element to this time to degree initiative. One, in identifying students who are motivated, but two, motivated to start tackling curriculum that they're going to need to graduate from one of our institutions. So the conversation's being nurtured. It's very much my wish that we're going to find a way to provide some funding to incentivize this and encourage my colleagues at the table here to continue to help us find a way to do that. I think it's a conversation that the state could greatly benefit from. Unless there's any comments on that, we'll pass the microphone or pass the committee off. Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Great conversations. I think what we'll do right now is we'll take a break until noon, and then we will come back and wrap up our meeting with the Smart Buildings Initiative Action Plan, so, and then public comment. So we will break until noon. Okay, we're now joined by Zach Brown and Blake Bjornson to speak with us about the Smart Buildings Initiative and the action plan that they've been working on. So we are very excited to hear what you have for us today. So I'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner, thank you for having us, allowing us the opportunity to speak. We were going to tell Regent Williams that we're glad we made the presentation because we were busy playing Pac-Man in our Nintendos outside. And we'll have a conversation later about technology with Regent Williams. So anyway, we realize that we're batting ninth and we're last on the agenda here. So we promised to really keep this brief. But we just, we've been working very hard on this, and the Regents, you all have supported this effort, and we really want to let you know where we're standing and where we see this moving forward. And we'll continue to work on this and keep you updated throughout the rest of the year. So just 10-second recap. The Smart Buildings Initiative is a student-led effort to capitalize on energy efficiency opportunities across the entire university system, to bring all these efforts together and to ultimately find incentives and processes that we can scale up energy efficiency efforts so that we can more efficiently use state dollars. So,
Next slide, please. And gentlemen, we're in our own mess on the agenda, so you guys, we want to hear what you have to say, and we're here because of our own actions, not yours, so you don't need to feel rushed.
Okay, thank you. So we had several objectives with the Smart Buildings Initiative, one of which is controlling utility costs. Utility costs are a large cost for all of our campuses, and if we can control those costs, we can begin to control one part of the cost of education, which is good for the state, and it's good for students. We can maintain our tuition levels at a more steady level. We can also address some of the large deferred maintenance and comfort issues that we have on campuses. A lot of those deferred maintenance issues cause actually pretty serious safety concerns. There's examples of those on every campus where we've got pipes that are really, really old, and if one of them were to burst, it would be a very serious issue. You think about one of the residence halls in Bozeman, which are from many decades ago. If a pipe in there burst, you'd have hundreds of kids that we'd have to move somewhere, and where would we do that? So we can address some of those issues while accomplishing our energy efficiency goals.
I might interject just really quickly on comfort. That's a part of the outcome of energy efficiency projects and evaluating the efficiency of heating and cooling air exchange systems in buildings. We have a lot of examples where consistently we hear from students and faculty and staff where they are uncomfortable in their workspace. And people who are uncomfortable, too hot or too cold in their workspace are less productive. And so that's part of the outcome here too, is when we look at these system performance measures in buildings, we can ultimately create an environment, well, we're saving money, yes, but we're also creating an environment where students, staff, and faculty can be more comfortable and therefore more productive.
And so, of course, one of the big goals for us was to reduce our energy consumption. That's something that both the universities in their recently adopted strategic plans, we heard a little bit earlier about MSUs, that environmental stewardship was one of the goals. And when you look at the MUS strategic plan, you see that there's an efficiency goal which seeks to bring instruction and academic support and student services to at least 70% of the overall budgets. Well, one great way to do that is to reduce the amount that we spend on energy and other utilities. So that's another ultimate goal of the Smart Buildings Initiative, is to reduce our energy consumption and the costs, which can accomplish our strategic goals.
And if you just go ahead to the next one. So we'll just walk you through the first 4 steps. So briefly, this whole initiative can be outlined in 4 different goals. First, we'll talk about smart metering equipment, which kind of really lays the infrastructure for achieving energy efficiency goals. So next slide, please.
Okay, so smart metering equipment is something that a lot of the campuses have already begun to invest in. In fact, MSUB, I came to find, already has all of their buildings monitored, at some level anyways. So what these smart meters do is they measure all the utility inputs into a building, and then they can pump this data out into a database. And these databases can be used for several different purposes. One, facilities folks can use them to more effectively and more dynamically manage the buildings. Another is that students, faculty, staff, people who are occupants of the building can go and look at this real-time data and see, sometimes even if you're in a really low usage building, you can see when you turn the toaster on, you can see the consumption go up. So it's kind of a cool way for people to visualize what they're doing. And it can also be used to identify energy hogs and problem areas. And Zach's got a good example of one of those.
Yeah, so just to give you an example of why this is important, part of this is both equipment and having the staff that's able to manage and evaluate this information. An example, quick anecdote here on the University of Montana campus. Within the last couple of years, we had a situation where mistakenly heating was left on in Washington Grizzly Stadium, and that problem was not caught for over 6 weeks. By the time people in facilities realized that these systems were overworking when the space wasn't being used, we had spent over $25,000 heating that space, and that's essentially money that's just gone. And so had we had the equipment in place to send an alert to facilities folks when that a problem was happening, and the staff that is appropriate to identify those issues, we could have avoided that cost expenditure and that waste of money. So there are examples like that all over the university system in all our state buildings. And so that's part of the goal here too, is to really give ourselves the tools we need to avoid situations like that.
Another thing that smart metering can do, and I touched on this a little bit, we can measure these results. We can, from the energy projects that we invest in, we can measure our results and see how we're doing, how we're improving our buildings, or sometimes how it's not working and how it's maybe even made the building less effective and less efficient. I also touched on this. Facilities people can use this smart metering equipment to manage the buildings more based on demand. Essentially, you might have heard of a smart grid. This could create a smart grid for campus and allow the facilities managers to use that smart grid to more effectively manage our utilities. Depending on who you talk to, these can cost between $10,000 and $15,000 per building. Like I said, there has been significant investment already on many of the campuses, and I think it's a matter of kind of capturing the remainder of those buildings, and that's part of what we've been talking to facilities people about, and part of what at the end of this, at the end of our report, we will have as a recommendation. So, and you can actually skip one more too. This PowerPoint wizardry was maybe ill-suited to this setting.
And Blake gets all the credit for the gadgets with the PowerPoint. So we'll just talk about energy monitoring really quick. Energy Cap is a program that has been invested in by the Department of Environmental Quality. And they've actually spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying the software package so that state entities can input their utility data and use this database. And so we actually don't have to make that investment, and we're finding that that's a great advantage, something we can plug into. Right now, we are using that system, but we're inputting data based off monthly utility bills. So ultimately, that isn't really useful in terms of really monitoring consumption. But when we have these real-time data input into this system, we can start to manage and see that information at a more fine-grained level. And so ultimately our goal is to input data from the smart meters into this energy cap system, which will take some minor investment, but the larger investment, which totals hundreds of thousands of dollars, has already been made by the DEQ. And yeah, you can go forward.
So this is just kind of a screenshot of what that looks like. This is the welding lab actually at Tech. And you can see the high points are in the winter. Each thing on the horizontal axis there are different months. So you see the low points in the summer. So it's kind of a cool way to see the consumption. So. Okay, now we'll move to metrics and goals. This is, I think, a really important step, and one that I think the Regents can have a lot of influence on. First of all, go ahead to the next one. Metrics. We think that metrics and goals should be campus specific, or goals rather should be campus specific. Just as an example, the electric and gas metric might be BTUs per square foot. And similar metrics can be set for water consumption, gallons per square foot type of a thing. But the reason that we think it should be campus specific is that each campus obviously has very different missions and very different buildings, I guess. A research intensive campus is going to have far different consumption rates than a non-research intensive campus. So some of the goals, though, I think that can be set on a more system-wide level include LEED certification. Certainly you've heard of LEED for new buildings. We've got several of those in the system now. There's also what's called LEED EBOM. EBOM stands for Existing Buildings Operations and Maintenance. And that's basically the same kind of a thing. It's managing your buildings in a sustainable way. And the final point here, and I think the most important, is a state code that was passed in 2009, I believe, and it's called the High Performance Building Standards. And if you'd go to the next one here, that code states that the Department of Administration, basically A&E, in collaboration, and I love that they called out the MUS specifically here, in collaboration with the Montana University System and other state agencies shall adopt high performance building standards. And these standards shall consider, integrated design principles to optimize energy performance, enhance indoor environmental quality, and conserve natural resources, cost effectiveness, including productivity, deferred maintenance, and operational considerations, environmental, economic, and social sustainability of materials and components, and building functionality, durability, and maintenance. Now, these standards actually haven't been developed yet. A&E still has not produced these standards. I think, and Zach and I both think, and I think students would support this, is that we should be seeking to establish these standards. These standards would apply to any major renovation and to any new building. There are standards that exist that are known worldwide, and that one is LEED. You can go to the next one here. LEED is a framework that's used all around the world. It's been developed over hundreds of committees that are incredibly talented people, and I think we really think that LEED is a great framework to base these standards on. The reason I say that is there is talk about creating a new standard, but I think it would be silly in this situation to create to reinvent the wheel, if you will. So.
And I would just add that this should be one of the take-homes from this presentation. From our perspective, it's just unsatisfactory that 4 years have gone by and we still have not created these standards. This is state statute, and the university system really, I think, can play a role in pushing this forward. Regent Buchanan.
Real quick on that LEED thing, I'm hearing from a lot of my developer friends in Billings that they can accomplish 95% of those efficiencies and the things that are intended with LEED without the expense by not doing the last 5. I mean, have we discussed, I understand the ability to say we're LEED certified in the sense of that we're accomplishing that priority, but do we need that to get that priority done? And again, with reflection to my example, I mean, most of these people building buildings in Billings are saying, great idea, we're going to incorporate almost all of it, but the extra expense, which apparently is substantial, is not worth that last 5% of gain.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that and then pass it to Blake, but usually like for new construction projects, LEED certification can add 2 to 3% to the cost, which, is a boundary in certain situations. But I think that point comes up again and again, and it honestly is probably one of the main reasons this hasn't happened. The folks at A&E have said, well, we don't like LEED for some of the reasons that you just pointed out. We're going to develop our own standard. And the net result of that is 4 years of doing nothing. We have, so I would argue that LEED provides some real advantages in that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Does it include some additional certification costs? Certainly, but it's a standard that has been adopted across the globe, and so there's certain efficiencies to be gained there, just process-wise, and from my perspective, that theoretically we could have accomplished some of those goals by now had we adopted standards 3 years ago. So,
and I would agree with Zach, but I would say that I think we have to do what's right for us, and I've heard those same concerns and comments, and even if it's just the ideas of LEED that are incorporated into our standards, the point is that we need to have those conversations and set those standards and start building our buildings and renovating our buildings using those standards. And I would look to your leadership to push that conversation. So, go ahead.
So the next step, and next slide please, is just talking about how we implement these conservation projects. And I think two categories of how we can identify savings are engineering projects. We've talked about performance contracting, but also behavior change is a way that you can achieve energy savings. So engineering projects specifically tend to be facilities intensive. We have several funding mechanisms for achieving these projects. DEQ has a loan program, the State Building Energy Conservation Program. We have energy performance contracts. We've got the long range building plan, and general fund budgets help us accomplish this. This is an important place where we're working to figure out how we can incorporate students more heavily into these projects. But ultimately it is tough to totally rely on students and faculty to achieve a lot of these things. It has to be done at somewhat the professional level at a broad scale. However, there are definitely opportunities to plug students in, and some of those opportunities are being taken advantage of. For example, technical engineering internships in facilities offices. And then we've got specific classes that can incorporate some of these projects into their curriculum and have engineering students at MSU doing senior design projects that actually can be implemented in buildings and things like that. Opportunities like that exist all over the place, and we're really in the process right now of looking into those opportunities and starting those conversations. Next slide, please. Behavioral projects are an interesting one. Studies have indicated that you can achieve 5 to 10% cost savings just by engaging with building occupants and helping them change behavior patterns and turning the lights off or turning the computers off or turning the heat down and just different things like that. And that's a real low cost kind of opportunity potentially, but it's difficult and kind of nebulous to achieve in many cases. So that's part of what we're working on too, especially piloting a lot of these here at UM because there's so much student interest. Figuring out how to start engaging classes with integrating communication between facilities folks who are managing this information and building occupants. So helping with that information exchange, helping building occupants become more comfortable, but also helping building occupants maybe come up with ideas with how they can reduce energy consumption in buildings. And there's some real potential there, and we're working to engage with staff and faculty and students to figure out how we can best find those opportunities. Next slide, please.
So this last piece has certainly been the most difficult piece, and probably what we spent by far actually the most time on during the summer and into the fall, and that's the reinvestment piece. And we actually had a slide for this following this, and you'll see that online. But we took it out because it's just outdated. It's rapidly changing. Just this morning, we met with Rosie Keller, Terry Least, and Mick Robinson. And I think we feel that we're on a really good path moving forward on how to create a structure to take savings from projects that we implement on campus, whether they be an engineering technical project or a behavior change project, and being able to retain those savings and reinvest into further savings so that we can really get at the really high-end buildings. So that said, as we continue to develop this, we'll continue to keep you guys informed, and at the end of this project, we'll have hopefully some really tangible outcomes and a really tangible accounting scheme. Go ahead. One more. Go ahead.
Okay, so just to summarize and conclude, this is our list of recommendations to you all, and again, we're continuing to work on these on our end moving forward as well. We really think we need to, at the Board of Regents level, establish metrics and goals for what we want to accomplish with energy efficiency projects. And we want to look at things like BTUs per square foot, but also setting goals related to high performance building standards. We want to continue to invest in the infrastructure that will allow us to achieve these savings. That means energy, real-time energy monitoring systems and that equipment, and we're moving that's probably where we've succeeded the most so far, is really pushing that. We're doing pretty well in that regard. But at UM, as an example, I worked a lot last year to help facilities purchase real-time monitoring equipment, and they did so, but now we have a couple dozen monitoring systems, but we don't have the funding to install them. So we're kind of trying to piece that process together. But continue to invest in infrastructure, make sure we have the staffing in place to really incorporate and implement these projects, continue to support energy efficiency projects, and then again, push for behavioral change and help us figure out how we can engage with students and building occupants to lower their consumption. And then ultimately, as Blake just mentioned, we want to create a mechanism so that looking forward, the trajectory is that we're able to scale up our energy efficiency efforts by reinvesting savings into future energy projects. Our engagement with you all and with the entire university system with energy efficiency is no small thing. I think this board and this university system has a real opportunity to establish itself as a national leader on this issue in terms of broad university system-wide participation and goals in terms of achieving energy projects. And I think it would be a great reflection upon this university system to take a leadership role in that regard, to say that we want to use state dollars in the most efficient and effective way possible, and we want to reduce our energy consumption and set an example for the rest of the country. So next slide, please. And that's all we have. So thank you so much, and we'd certainly welcome any questions. But as we keep saying, you will hear more from us moving forward.
We hope so. Thank you so very much, and the notes are taken, and we will move forward with the recommendations that you folks have put so much time into. We appreciate the conversation and the way in which you folks have moved it forward so quickly. You mentioned at the end, and I know that we spent a lot of time, I think Tyler, Clayton, Mr. Robinson, and you two at the table over the summer talking about that, the mechanism by which we may be able to reinvest the savings. And so I'm very excited to hear what that might look like, especially considering some of the challenges that are presented by statute. So I cannot commend you enough for the great work and the vision that you have for the university system in this regard. So we thank you, and I rest assured your task list will see some checks shortly. With that, then, I would offer it up for any questions or comments from members of the board in this regard.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, and to all of you who have assisted in this project and in this effort, we thank you as well. President Engstrom.
Madam Chair, I would just like to make the comment that, I've been in higher education for, 35 to 40 years now, and I think this is perhaps the most well thought out and impactful student initiative that I have ever seen. And so I urge all of us to get behind this in the most aggressive way. So thank you very much, both of you and all of the rest of the students that have been working on this.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Madam President.
Yes, and I also wanted to say how impressed I was by the presentation, but also by the overall project. And you're doing a wonderful job. And let's not forget that behind Zach and Blake, there are literally hundreds of students and faculty members who support this initiative. I have personally met students in Billings, in Great Falls, in Northern, who are passionate about the ways and manners in which we can have a better future. So this is a great testament of what we talk about, them being learners and leaders. So the future of the state of Montana is in very good hands indeed.
Thank you, Madam President. I
Madam
could
Chair.
not agree more. Regent Williams.
Just as a follow-on to what both presidents have said, the students were kind enough, simply because I was here in Missoula, and some of the seeding for this started in Missoula as well as down in Bozeman. They were kind enough to bring me in early into this. And when they took it to both presidents, I thought it was a great idea, but frankly, fellas, when you took it to both presidents, I wasn't so sure they'd give you a green light on this. And the reason was this. It appeared that you were, at that time, that you were biting off way more than you could chew or swallow. And I thought both presidents might give you a yellow light, just be careful, but they had faith in you. These two folks had faith in you, and they said, folks, go get it. And as evidence today, they've really gone and are well on the way to getting it. So I want to thank both presidents for your faith in the student government.
Madam Chair, I might make a quick comment. It's appropriate, as it is Cat Grizz weekend, to point out that we have a bobcat and a grizzly leading this up together collaboratively. And I'd just like to point out that that really is a reflection of the leadership from our two presidents in terms of a collaborative university system-wide effort where we want to use each other's resources and strengths and information to build something that's good for the whole university system. So yeah, from my end, go Grizz, but this is a great opportunity for the whole system and both institutions and students to work together, and we have great working relationships across the whole system. So thank you for your leadership on that, President Cruzado and President Engstrom.
And I'll get the last word by saying go Cats and thank you again.
And Regent Williams assures me he's available after the meeting for that Nintendo and Pac-Man lesson. So before we move into public comment, just a few announcements. Regent Buchanan.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up. Jeff, Regent Krause is watching and had sent a couple of comments related to the veterans conversation, and I want to put them on the record because they're his thoughts on that. He wanted to look into free online courses for active duty personnel, what the costs of those would be, as well as what the cost of covering full tuition and costs for veterans if we chose to go something to that line. And then he also, as comments were made yesterday, related to recognizing previous military classwork and training from an assessment-based. And he had a great idea. We were referencing Senator Tester's commitment to all of this. It seems like a very likely idea to work with, have him help us work with the Department of Defense to match any commitment that we're making to these types of efforts. I think that's a very good idea. And then his other conversation input related to the program review, and he said a couple of things he'd like to see in any further review that we have. Very simple criteria: how many graduates are each of these programs putting out, how many are enrolled, and then what are job placement information. So thanks to Regent Krause, who's clearly still participating. Thank you for indulging me there.
Thank you, and thank you, Regent Krause, for those great recommendations. We do just have a couple of announcements before we move to public comment. The commissioner's daughter is back there, Lauren Christian, so we like to recognize family when we can and when we remember. Additionally, we'd like to thank PBS for the good work they do to make sure that our outreach is extended into the greater Montana community. And then finally, a great big thank you to President Engstrom and his faculty and staff and students for being such gracious hosts this last couple of days. And with that, before public comment, I turn it over to you.
The Grizz is in the house and the cat is on the way. They've chosen not to sit together tomorrow, which is probably a good idea. We do have one announcement, and frankly, the announcement's been harder to negotiate than the rest of the process. But we do have one of the members from my cabinet and your staff that is getting close to a long-planned retirement, and she's not very pleased that I want to announce this, but as I told her, I think everyone will want a chance to thank her for her service, and her comments to me were that she would rather thank them for all the confidence they've shown over the years. But Kathy Swift has announced that she intends to retire at year end, and that's something the two of us have been working toward. But want to at least recognize her for many, many years of service to the Montana University system. As chief legal counsel, she served and then left for a while and came back and served again. So it proves she's a glutton for punishment. And she's just done an outstanding job, and it's been a great resource for me as both a board member and now in this role. And so I very much thank her for her service. Kathy, thank you. And you can speak if you want, or we'll plan a big party for you, or all the other things you've been mentioning.
You will be missed.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one more announcement.
President.
and I'm sorry that it has taken me this long to get to this announcement, but yesterday the board considered and approved a title of Dean Emerita for Tamara Miller, our former Dean of the Library at Montana State University. Dr. Miller had a spectacular career, 40 years servicing libraries, the last 9 with us at Montana State University when she announced her retirement. A national search was conducted, and I'm very proud to say that we have attracted a spectacular dean for the libraries in Kenning Artlish, who joins us from University of Utah. His scholarship focuses on search engine optimization. So Regent Williams, if you need any help or would like to participate in that, we will take you on that. He has also been, he also started the Mountain West Digital Library. And in 2009, Dr. Artlish was named as a mover and shaker by the Library Journal. His partner, Deborah Keel, also joined Montana State University as a research associate in the Medical Laboratory Sciences program. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Artlish to Montana State University.
Okay, now we'll move to the section in our meeting for public comment.
Hello, my name is Rachel Jeffrey. Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rachel Jeffrey. Madam Chairman, members of the board, President Engstrom. I have 2 issues, one about the plan to put Missoula College on the University Golf Course. One is conservation, and the other is cost. Conservation. Last night, all I could think about is the beautiful old trees on the University Golf Course. I can see no reason to destroy a green space in a city of Missoula's size in order to put a building that could be put in another location. Cost. How do you destroy something when a building could be put in another location and make no difference in the cost of the building? I think it is a crime to destroy something as beautiful as the University Golf Course. I think as far as conservation, trees are one of the biggest cleansers of our air, and to destroy those trees would be a crime. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming me, Board of Regents. My name is Jody Waits, and I am here to ask for your support of the inclusion of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression to the university system's non-discrimination policy. I am the Director of Community Giving at Pride Foundation and ask for your support in solidarity with the nearly 4,000 annual donors and volunteers we welcome. Tough day for a cold from across the Northwest. Specifically, I share this letter representing our Montana-based staff member, Caitlin Koppel, who resides here in Missoula and attended graduate school here at UM, and just last year was elected to the Missoula City Council as the Alderwoman of Ward 4. She was tackled by laryngitis this week, so while I sneezed on the mic, I get this job anyway. Thank you very much for welcoming me. Founded in 1985, Pride Foundation is the nation's largest equality-focused community foundation. To date, we have awarded nearly $40 million to vibrant organizations and passionate students across Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, and Washington State. Specifically, our scholarship program is nearly 20 years old and has provided support to more than 1,000 students. Pride Foundation further uses our endowment to gain equality with companies with which we invest our funds. We work with our corporate partners to help them build non-discrimination policies that include sexual orientation and gender identity. These changes have meant better protections for nearly 3 million workers globally and include partnerships with McDonald's, General Electric, and Walmart. We would be happy to provide you with examples of other universities we've worked with, and most recently our partnership with the University of Alaska at Anchorage. Thank you very much. These are simple policies that are impactful.
Thank you, Jody.
Hello, my name is Anita Green, and I'm here as a representative for the University of Montana's Sexual Scholars. As a representative for the University of Montana's Sexual Scholars, we support the non-discrimination policy 703 to include sexual orientation and gender identity. If the Board of Regents fails to include sexual orientation and gender identity to its anti-discrimination policy, you are sending a message to not only the entire University of Montana campus, but also the Missoula community as a whole, that the majority of people are the only people that matter, and that the minority doesn't matter at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Hello, my name is Adrienne Edwards. I'm the Media Marketing Director for Lambda Alliance here on the University of Montana campus. Thank you for welcoming me in this time for public speech. We at Lambda Alliance believe that adding gender identity and sexual orientation is important to Montana as a whole, not just the university system, but most importantly to the students of the university system. Because of the fact that the non-discrimination policy does not include gender identity and sexual orientation or preference, it is denying people their freedom of choice. Our society is supposed to be moving forward, but because the policy does not envelope into it the preferences mentioned above, it is moving us further backwards, denying people their identity. Who are we to dictate what should be covered under a non-discrimination policy? Those people who choose to identify under another gender, sexual orientation, or preference should be given the same non-discrimination rights as those who are colored or religious or have a disability. There are no reasonable grounds to deny a person the same acts of care of those who are listed under the policy. Might we further add that the December 10th, 1999 was when the policy 703 was revised, and many things have changed since then. We are living in an age when we don't have to hide who we are. We are living in an age when we don't have to be afraid to tell people that we are lesbian, that we are gay, that we are transgender. We do not have to be afraid to walk down the streets. That is our right. Who are we, the right to decide what people can choose to be? We hope that you will take our concerns seriously. This may seem like a small step that only affects the population of Montana University system, but we can guarantee that it will send a wave across Montana and under campuses around the nation. Hate is wrong, and we cannot afford to sit back and do nothing while people are being discriminated against. Action needs to be taken to ensure that we become a progressive system. We at Lambda urge you to create an implementation task force, including a student chair, to ensure that this policy change remains a priority of the Montana University system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Micah Nielsen, and I'm the business manager for the student government here at the University of Montana. And while I would love to support the previous comments, and I do, I'm actually going to talk to you about the Missoula College. So forgive me for beating a dead horse, but this is important to me and to other students. I'm actually going to read you an email on behalf of Jay Moore, a student at the University of Montana College, who is class right now and wasn't able to make it. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Moore, and I'm proud to say that I am a student at Missoula College. It is an honor to speak in front of so many people who support the Missoula College, an institution that made possible what I consider to be the best part of my life. I am a non-traditional student who has taken the opportunity to make a better life for myself. Because of Missoula College, I have reconnected with my ability to learn. Because of you, he is not standing here today, but I'm reading on behalf of him. Because of Missoula College, I am an officer of Phi Theta Kappa, an honor society that is making a difference in this community, as has been recognized by ASUM and the most outstanding student group at the University of Montana. At Missoula College, and I am inspired by students on a daily basis by their courage and determination to create a better life for themselves and those around them. Every day, I see dedicated mothers and fathers determined to learn while providing for their children by working a job and then showing up to Phi Theta Kappa meetings every week. 4 out of 5 of the women and 3 out of 5 of the men in my honor society are single parents. Many of the services that we pay for, including childcare, are only offered here on the Mountain campus. Missoula College is the University of Montana and needs to be integrated as such. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Micah.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I appreciate your allowing this discussion. My name is Jim Hamilton, and I live in the Bitterroot. My reason for being here is just to question the proposed location of the Missoula College. I don't think any of us that live in the valley question the need for it, but I do a lot of volunteer work down there, and with kids and prospective students, and I have yet to talk to one that agrees that this location is best for them. They prefer the fort. And I know in the planning, they've gone through, various locations to place this college, but I just don't know how they can justify for out-of-town kids coming in, having to negotiate their way down South Avenue over to Arthur, because I do it. I come in, I take Molly classes, and I park over by that golf course, and it's a horrible place to try to come in through from out of town. So I know that Bitterrooters, we whine a lot, but doggone it, we'd like to have a location. Plus, I'm from the south side of Chicago, an Irish Catholic neighborhood, so Representative Williams knows all about that we like to gripe a lot. But anyway, the location is what we're concerned about. We, as people that have to come in, feel that the fort is probably a better location. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Commissioner. I, first of all, would like to thank you for coming to our campus and thank you for your continuous support and your continuous fight for students and for higher education here in Montana. My name is Topher Williams. I am a junior here at the University of Montana studying geography, focusing on community and environmental planning. I also am currently serving in my second term as a senator on the Associated Students of the University of Montana. Growing up next to a university, I could hardly wait for my opportunity to attend one. I've always known that universities have always been places that challenge norms and foster new ways of thinking. Universities are always ensuring that there are people of different faiths, colors, political ideologies, and countries. All of these people are protected by the Board of Regents Policy 703, which is your non-discrimination policy. In July, I received a telephone call from ASMSU Senator Troy Duker, who could not be here today. He informed me that Policy 703 does not include protection for sexual orientation or gender identity and preference. And we both agreed that it should. Mr. Duker and myself worked closely to draft identical resolutions, and we passed them through both of our respective senates. Universities pride themselves on moving our civilization forward. We need to make sure that our students, faculty, and staff are safe and welcome on our campuses if we want to continue our legacy of excellence. I know one of the recruiters for our university for the Southern California region. He informed me that on his last trip, he was asked by both homosexual and transgendered individuals if Montana is a safe place for them to come to school. If we want to continue to recruit students from in and out of state, we need to make sure that all of our students are safe. I ask through the implementation process of this policy that we thoroughly vet it and that we have the student voice present as a chair or co-chair of this committee. I know that all of you want to see this system and our students be successful. And I hope that all of us are able to put student safety in Montana before politics. Because everyone should feel safe at school here in the last best place. Thank you.
Thank you, Topher.
I appreciate the Board of Regents, all the work they do, and I'm glad you're here. And I'm not a great public speaker, but I opened up the paper this morning, and what do I see? we're going to have a private-public organization building on the open space for the COT. We went through this the last time. We had 5,000 people that said, no, we don't want this. My comments to you is I am simply amazed at how the administration at the University of Montana has totally ignored. They talk about allowing people to have input, and we're going to listen to input. They have never listened to any input. If you went around the community, it is not a very popular thing to put the COT and destroy an open space. As the one lady said, and I said it 5 years ago, we got a Central Park here. What in the devil are you people doing trying to destroy the most beautiful thing in the city of Missoula? There's lots of other places you can build. I don't like the idea of private people building on public spaces, because I know how that goes. I've been in the business world for many, many years. I'm 72 years old. I've only golfed the university course one time, so I'm not a great golfer. I'm not interested in that. I really think that the other regions, not the local regions, because they live here and they're in bed with the administration, if that's the way you want to say it. I'm imploring for you other people in the regions to take a good look at what the public wants. We're the taxpayers. We're the people. We pay for your salaries. You do not pay for our salaries. That's my comment. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kia Abbey. Thank you for all being here. I'm speaking in regards to the addition of gender identity and sexual orientation to the system's non-discrimination policy. First, I'd like to commend the office and their dedication to student comments and concerns, and I foresee that this initiative will be no different than student initiatives in the past. It is critical that the Montana University system take progressive and proactive measures to ensure that every person, student, staff, and faculty alike, feels safe and welcome on our campuses. This not only supports our priority of access, but also the creation of campuses that foster diversity of thought and experience. In order to ensure that this policy change remain a priority for the Montana University system, I urge you to create an implementation task force that is co-chaired by a student, so that the plan can truly consider the experiences of LGBTQ students across the system. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Christians, members of the board, Presidents Cruzado, Engstrom, I'd like the record to first note how short President Abbey is. And secondly, I'd like to say that I too am here to speak on the Missoula College issue, but perhaps from a little bit different perspective. I think it's pretty clear that there's a difference in opinion, there are differences in perspective, and there are differences in approach to the way that we want this plan to be developed. What I don't want out of this process is for there to be any impression whatsoever, and this is for the record and to everyone in this room, that this is a students versus community issue. Students on this campus are 100% committed to being good neighbors, to being good members of the Missoula community, and to being productive in conversation with this community. Throughout the year, ASUM has really made this a goal of ours. We've engaged with our city council, first ever city council ASUM meeting. We've expanded our off-campus renter center to include more positions for our neighborhood ambassador program. We've created our Sunday sweeper program where we go out in the university district and clean up the neighborhood after football games, after big events. We're committed to the future of this community. We're committed to being neighbors in this community now. And we're happy to take input on how we can be better neighbors, better members of this community, and better people to live and work with around here. You know, everyone who's commented on this so far are part of Missoula. Students are part of Missoula, business members are part of Missoula, neighbors are part of Missoula. And as someone who considers himself very invested in this community, very invested in this university, very invested in this state, I'd like to say that we're also members of the future community of Missoula, and we want that to be taken into perspective because we're here to preserve not only the legacy of this institution, the legacy of Missoula College, but a very positive relationship with the city, with Missoula, with the state of Montana. So in closing, I mean, I'd say go Missoula. You know, let's make this into a positive interaction. Whether or not there's a difference, I want this to highlight that we can communicate effectively, that we can be helpful in hearing each other's voices in making this a better place to live, learn, and work. And go Missoula, and of course I have to say, go Grizz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, Regents, and Presidents, I'm here as a faculty member from the University of Montana, Missoula. My name is Liz Putnam. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Missoula College, just from a faculty perspective, if I could. I think, from what I've understood after my last 13 years of being here in town, that there has been due diligence done as far as the site selection has occurred. And I'd like to talk to you about that location, because that location impacts my students in many ways. As an undergraduate advisor, I have students that take courses on both campuses. Traveling in between them, sometimes due to scheduling difficulties, can be problematic. Obviously, for that reason, a closer location is more desirable. There would be a reduction of the infrastructure costs by locating the Missoula College on the South Campus. There would be, for fellow faculty members, I know several fellow faculty members who are involved in the same departments on both campuses. For them, traveling back and forth to attend meetings, professional meetings, department meetings, is facilitated by the location. Also, changing the site selection would result in further delay. We've already have woefully inadequate facilities for Missoula College, and you are all aware of that. You were there Wednesday night. You saw what the facilities are like. I don't know that you got to tour the trailers or not, but I have friends on faculty there who freeze in the wintertime, boil in the summertime, and trying to teach in those situations is very difficult. So in conclusion, I would like you to consider all of the work that has already gone into this decision and to consider the result of any kind of delay on the future education students in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Further public comment? Further public comment? Further public comment? Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.